Okay, it looks like we are live. So, hello everybody. Before I do anything else, I'm going to check the audio levels again because I'm still paranoid about, that one stream we have where all the audio is terrible. So, if you're listening in the chat, please say something if you can hear me, and we will get started from there. I just want to put that out there. I promise at some point I'll figure out how to do this. Maybe I'll have more free time in like a year. We'll see. My name is Paul. Welcome to the Stormkeep. Today I'm joined by John, David, Mergonk, and Jack. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
So we have not made a video in a while. And there's a couple reasons for that, right? One of them is, I don't know about you guys, but right now the meta kind of feels really stale. It got real stale real quick. And I'm sort of expecting some major changes to happen. Maybe not expecting is the right word. I'm hoping major changes happen. So it's like, don't want to get too deep into 4th edition videos until something changes, right? Because like, this can't continue, right? Like, am I crazy? Is it as bad as I'm thinking?
Yeah, it's not bad if you're just play for fun. If you just like have an agreement with someone, be like, hey, no endless spells, let's just not do that. I think you can, or like be like, we'll take our armies endless spells, like or we'll take like a lore that isn't morbid conjuration. You can still have fun, but I think if you go to tournaments, I think all your games are going to be the same, like effectively trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's yeah. Okay, but we'll talk more about that when we talk about list building. The other reason is we were supposed to do an index review, and we were hard at work on that. But then my wife decided to give birth a month early, so I've been busy doing that. So if you guys aren't on the Discord server and you are not aware of why we haven't been making videos lately, there's your catch-up. It is coming soon. We are still finalizing the index review. I think we're kind of at a point where we can adjust for like, these endless spells are so stupid, this is going to change, this is what it's going to look like after things shake out, more or less, right? Like, I think that's where we're at with the index review.
It's gotten pretty clear, I think.
Yeah, like, nobody wants to play against Purple Sun and Shackles for another 3 months. Like, they're gonna patch it.
They have to. Oh my god, it's so bad.
Shackles is so annoying.
It's so funny playing games right now, and like my opponents are like, oh, what did you bring? You brought Morbid Tude. Okay, I guess we'll have 6 manifestations on the turn at the bottom of 1. This is a fun game.
And then 8 the next turn or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought like they would make the rule sort of like if there was a Purple Sun on the table, or if there isn't a Purple Sun on the table, you can cast it. So like there'd be this constant battle about like who's casting which one, and then you have to get rid of theirs to put yours on the table. But then it's just like, it just literally says if there's a friendly. So like you guys are saying, you end up with multiples of the same kind of pretty big endless spell just spiking itself to death.
We should bring back.
I didn't even realize.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I didn't even realize they didn't have a rule saying a forecast wizard, for instance, can't bring out more than 1 manifestation in turn. No, they were just like, nah. Yeah, have Techless summon a 1,200 point army turn 1.
In one of my first games, I was like, what do you mean you're casting another one? And they're like, there's no rule about that you can't cast more than 1 in the same wizard. I'm like, what? How is that wizard controlling all that shit?
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll talk about it later. We're just, as soon as we start, we're not going to stop. It's going to be amazing. So first, let's talk about our Painting Liberators contest from July. We thought it would be fun since new Liberators were coming out. We never really did that much old cast stuff for our painting contest, and we thought, well, people don't. Part of it was like, we don't want people buying the old cast models because the writing is on the wall. All of it's going to get removed. None of it's going to be legal in 2 years, probably. Like, or at the very least, next time there's an edition change, all of the old Vanguard Chamber, Extremist Chamber, it's all gone, right? There's nothing left legal. It's all going to be Thunderstrike from now on. That's seems to be the case. So we just didn't want people buying those old models. I just feel bad about that. So this is kind of our opportunity to do that, because Liberators, there's the old models, which I think still hold up personally. I don't hate them.
Great.
especially the full kit, right, where you got like more mobility in how you position the arms. It's not just like this look with the hammer and shield, you know, like there's variety, and twin hammers, twin swords, all that stuff.
And they're just not different enough.
Like, yeah,
that it matters.
Yeah. And then we've got the new Liberators coming out with Skaven Tide. Probably not going to get another kit for them. I don't think this is a scenario where Liberators are going to have new weapon options. The kit looks complete, right? There's options for primes on different models. No, there's an option for a prime and a non-prime on the same model. We're probably not getting another Liberator kit. I think it's going to be like Vindictors. That's it. That's the end of that kit. But there should be more Reclusians coming, right? Like we're all in agreement there.
Yeah.
Yeah, assume so.
Hopefully. Hope that, I mean, that chamber just needs to be expanded. I would like to see it expanded. I would like to see more lore. I also would like chickens not to be 210 points.
Chickens?
Vigilant.
The Vigilant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like, feels like they have a lot of potential coming, but we haven't seen the full package.
To be clear, he means the Lord Vigilant on Griffstalker, because there will be other Lord Vigilants, clearly.
Right.
It's just the Lord Arcanum, just times 2 now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is. Yeah.
So yeah, we did the Painting Liberators. We thought it would be a good opportunity with the new ones coming out. We could have a mix of old and new. It would give some people an incentive to like speed paint a bunch of their dudes that might sit on the shelf otherwise, because I mean, Liberators don't look great in game right now, you know. So any excuse to paint them is a good one, right? Like our very first painting contest was basically that. It was a Knight Relictor back when he was 5 points cheaper than a Lord Relictor, and everyone was like, no, this is the worst model they've ever made. And he turned out to be one of the best units in our book. Just needs to be.
I love that model. I love that model and ability right now, especially.
Oh, he's great now. Paying dividends off with that painting contest for sure. Yeah.
Wild.
Yep. All right, so I will shut off the pop out, and we can go into our honorable mentions. All right, our first honorable mention is from Quest Monkey. Jack, you put these together. You want to say a few words?
Yeah, I was the one that compiled these. I think that all of our submissions were fantastic. With Quest Monkey, we really liked the blue tones on the weapons. A lot of the work was very clean and crisp. I think that they came out really great, and I'm glad to see that they got caught up on the honorable mentions.
Yeah, can you guys figure out what kind of gold that is? Because that's a really different shade than what I'm used to seeing. Is that Retributor gold with like flesh shade on top, and that's it, or is that like a contrast, or what is that?
It's definitely not Reikland Fresh Shade. I can tell you that.
Maybe Gilliman Flesh or Gorgorn Fur. Gilliman Flesh, I know, darkens the gold quite a bit. That could be it.
Makes it look more brassy and bronzy, which is kind of cool.
That looks nice.
Yeah. All right, moving on to our next honorable mention from Mega Paladin. Went with a classic Hallowed Knight scheme, right? The silver, the gold trim, and then blue shoulder pads, which is the scheme they're going with on Skaven Tide, which is pretty cool. Not my jam, personally. I would never want to paint this much armor trim. Just having to paint all that silver and then all that gold and then highlight all of it. Oh boy, that would just take so much time. But it looks good. It looks good when it's done. So kudos to Mega Paladin, especially the basing, right? Like these little stone, all the stonework that's been done here, the moss growing on top of it, or maybe is that orc blood? I'm gonna go with orc blood. It sounds cooler.
I really like the blue here too. This one popped out to me because a lot of people will do Hallowed Knights and just also use like the Calgar blue or whatever. Not Calgar blue. The one that
Teclis blue?
Hammers uses.
Oh, Calidor Sky?
Calidor Sky.
Yeah, the main sort of Stormcast one, but it's darker.
Oh, Cantor blue.
Yeah, that's it. And then this blue is like a nicer kind of like really pops. And I really liked that. I thought that stood out to me a lot. Mm-hmm. Looks good with the silver. It's sort of like at the same level of the silver, so it kind of matches well. It balances good.
Mm-hmm. Good shading on the face too. That's way better than how I can paint faces. I'm not good at it. You can see there's like around the nose. There's some additional shading there.
The squirrel's my favorite.
I was waiting for somebody to mention the squirrel. It looks like she's just gonna send that thing flying, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. All right, our next one, no stranger to the Stormkeep art contest. Andreas Packoff is a different name, but a familiar color scheme. I love this scheme. Every time he posts it, it's always good. It's this like, I don't want to say flat, but it's like a pale, non-metallic blue kind of look going on. And then he's got like this non-metallic gold that's very vibrant, and then this like ceramic white for all the weapons and shields and everything. It's such a unique color scheme, and it always looks good every time he posts it.
It's kind of Blade Guard veteran in there, or two Blade Guard veterans in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
Raiders. I was like, all right.
Yeah,
It's funny. I saw this and I was like, "Oh, I have those models on sprue somewhere from like years ago." When I was just painting, because I was painting a lot of 40K, and I was like, I might pull those out. It was kind of inspiring to see this.
I remember when
I gave them bolt guns.
when Stormcast first came out, there was a lot of comparisons to Space Marines, right? But there's one image that always stuck in my mind, which was like a whole bunch of Stormcast, like Liberators and Judicators and different color schemes, and every so often one of them was just replaced with a Space Marine with the same color scheme, and it was like you had to look very closely to see it, but just blended in so well. So yeah, good meme. Lives on.
I saw even GW released new Blood Angel models this week, or announced them, and one of them I was like, that armor is so like identical to the Stormcast armor. That would make a sweet proxy.
Yeah, the Blood Angels captain that they revealed this morning. He's got the pecs, the Liberator pecs.
It looks exactly like it. Yeah.
There's been a lot of cross-pollination between those design teams. Probably the same people working on it, honestly. If you look at like 40K Space Marines, they look a lot like the old Stormcast. A lot of similar design language and the way the armor plating looks on them. And then the Primaris obviously took some cues from Stormcast, and then Stormcast took cues from Primaris, and it just keeps going around and around and around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on to our third place. We have this very unique color scheme from Greyash. Greyash? I'm going to say Greyash. I don't think I've ever seen a purple and brass Stormcast army before, especially not with white highlights. That's what really stuck out to me about this. The color scheme is awesome. In addition to it being kit-bashed Vanquishers bodies with Liberators on top, I really like that. I think it adds like that extra little bit of just attitude to these guys. Like the Liberators that come in Skaven Tide kind of look a little strange with like all of them are kind of with their big hammers, you know, they got this like weird posing going on. The Vanquisher legs completely fix that. Like this looks great.
Yeah, robes are just cool. Robes are just cool to have. Like Sequitors, in my opinion, are one of our better looking battle infantry for that reason.
I'm excited for Thunderstrike Sequitors. Hopefully they make them.
I hope we never see another Redeemer unit ever.
I know. We don't need like
anymore. Yeah, we don't need battle line anymore.
Stop giving us Stormcast battle.
We are running short on Justicars, but we have plenty of Redeemers.
They could turn into the same unit with just weapon options at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then you could add a Gert if you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be. I would hope they design them all to be way more distinct. Like, they're kind of different now, but they're just, none of them are good enough, right? Like, Vindictors shouldn't be anti-charge Ren +1. They should be anti-charge damage +1. Then that's a real difference now. It's like, how are you getting +1 damage on your 5-man squad? Maybe Liberators, when they charge something or when they're fighting on an objective, they get +1 damage. Vanquishers, when they fight hordes, they get +1 damage. You know, that's a real difference in how these units work.
I also think they made them look more similar, especially the Liberators.
I'm sad Liberators don't have a banner still.
Vindicators.
Right? Liberators didn't get a banner? I'm pretty sure.
They did not.
They did not.
No.
Why?
For musician?
No. They have none.
And it still costs 10 points more to vanquish.
But it's actually critical in games. Like I have used both of those things. Like it's actually helpful.
My guess is they got that OC ability to account for that, but even that's like weird design. Like they can't really go out of friendly territory to use it. Like, so what's the point? Like,
yeah, it's not a great ability.
All right, moving on.
Yep. Great work, Grey Ash. Congratulations on placing third and getting us to talk about how Vanquishers and Liberators are too similar. Second place comes from Danielle Carbone with at first only a single Liberator, which surprised everyone. And I was like, it's just one model, right? Like somebody can post 5 and then they got a numerical advantage. But the paint job is just so good. Like this is so technically proficient. I love it. Everything, every nick in the armor, every scratch on the shield, somehow even managed to add like weight and depth and an edge highlight onto the Stormcast shields, which are, if you guys have built enough old Stormcast shields, you know that there's not really a sharp edge there. So you've actually painted on a sharp edge onto a rounded surface, which that was what I've really liked the most about this. A weird detail to care about, but yeah, these are all fantastic.
There's non-metallic metal too, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Always looks good. Yep.
Great.
I really like the hammer, the silver and the hammer. Just such wow.
Yep. 3-man unit. I think that's what kept it from coming in first place overall, is that it was only 3/5 of the unit. But wow, this is such a good paint job. I also really like the Retributor mace for the Grand Hammer. Always love seeing Retributor stuff. Yeah. It's such a cool model.
Yeah, and the little scratches and details just incredible.
The
it takes so much time to do that. And
like
when you look closely at some of the lines, like it's very particularly that there's like a shadow line and then a scratch line. So it like actually gives it that depth.
Mm-hmm.
Tough to do.
Yep. And from
tough to do random enough to look good.
From the symbol on the shield, it looks like there's weathering, like it's been beaten down in the rain. Like there's just so much attention to detail here. I love it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at these paint jobs and I'm like, mine doesn't, like my models don't seem to have that kind of detail. I don't know if my primer's too thick or something. I'm like, how the hell are they doing this?
It's got to glaze it layer by layer.
Yeah. And then
I've thought about learning how to do non-metallic metal, but I'd rather have an army painted than spend like a week on a model,
Yeah. I think that's basically it.
It's so time consuming, and this isn't just cope. I'm not as good of a painter as this. I'm just gonna admit it. This is not cope. I just don't have the time to learn how to do this.
So good.
Fantastic. And our first place is Oblivion, who is also becoming a regular in our painting contest, and I love to see it. He's got such a distinct style. He's got this like winter theme with this coppery brass, very, very muted and dark, but then he's got little bits of highlights in all the most important places, on the weapons and the eyes, along the blade on those guys. Like, just what an awesome style. Great basing, great paint job, just fantastic all around.
Oh, yeah. It's also very grim dark. And like, I like that. Jade always looks great with gold. Not a lot of people go for it, but it looks really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Each edition just gets more and more grim, doesn't it? First edition was like, there's cannibal mutants out there that want to destroy all of society and end the universe as we know it. But we're gonna fight back, and it's gonna be great. And it's like, 4th edition is the worst. It just keeps getting worse. Like, it's getting so much worse constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And this captures that feel, like this is, these guys are ready to be sent to the Ruination Chamber, I think.
Yeah, they're close, for sure. But it looks like there's, a lot of variation in it, which is always nice. Sometimes models in a unit just like they look too similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got 3 distinct grand hammers or grand weapons in this unit. One Retributor mace, one from the Prosecutor kit, I believe. That's where the middle one comes from, and then the grand sword. I don't know if that's an original Liberator grand sword, if that's Prosecutors. I want to say that's the Prosecutor grand sword, but I could be wrong about that. I built too many of these models.
Prosecutor had that sword. Was that a different profile at the time?
It was the same. Instead of 3s and 4s, it was 4s and 3s. But it was a grand hammer, basically, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And fun fact, since we're on the topic, in first edition, the Celestial Vindicators had rules that buffed units with sharp weapons. So blades, polearms, axes. Only those weapons. So you actually had a rule reason to use swords instead of hammers. Wild, you know?
Yeah.
That is crazy, yeah.
It was cool. I miss stuff like that, honestly. Okay, that'll wrap up our Painting Liberators contest. We are back on the screen. And I want to announce that our Painting Prosecutors contest is going on. Same kind of reasoning as our Painting Liberators. We want to give people a chance to show off their old models, which are probably painted very well, and then also have a chance to paint the new ones. It's been, it'll be 6 weeks by the time this contest ends. That should be enough time to paint 3 Prosecutors for people. We're not certain what the prizes are right now. Things are a little bit of a flux. We will announce those on Discord as soon as we get them. And thank you again to Leighton Gaming in Florida for sponsoring our painting contest. Ignore the fact that it says contest closes July 31st. It should say August 31st. I've had 4 hours of sleep in 2 days, so that's there might be some typos here and there. Like where it says Painting Liberators, yeah, that should say Painting Prosecutors. All right, we're moving on. On to our main topic of the day. I wanted to have a discussion about list building. Because we had plans going into 4th edition for how we wanted to structure content coming out on the podcast. We had a lot of ideas for videos, and after playing test games, we're like, oh yeah, the edition feels good, this is all good. And then we started optimizing lists, and we started figuring out, we started finding all the problems with this edition. Part of it is list building, part of it is the metagame, part of it is the core rules, just making spells way too busted. And it's kind of all incredibly complex and confusing and just, frankly, doesn't feel great. This actually feels worse than 3rd edition list building, if I'm being honest, right? We're so restricted and the game feels way less balanced. We get questions all the time from people. Hey, how do I start building a list? What's the starting point? What's the best way to use this unit? And it's a really complex answer. We don't have an easy answer to it. So we wanted to do this stream where we kind of just lay out all these topics, lay out our thoughts, what we've been thinking over the past, what has it been, like a month since Skaven Tide came out? We got all the rules.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, it's been about a month.
Yeah, so I've got a short list here. We can talk about all this stuff. We can talk about our thoughts on it. Then we've also got a number of sample lists that we've submitted here. Okay, so where do we start? I guess endless spells, right? Let's keep complaining about endless spells. They're totally busted.
Oh,
It is like 1st edition summoning before they added points. That's how busted endless spells are. You are adding a unit to your army, multiple units to your army if you have multiple wizards, because why not? Every single turn of the game. Not just round, but every single turn, because you can summon them during your opponent's turn as well. And there's no interaction from your opponent at that point. They can't banish it. They just have to kill it that turn. And that is just way too strong. So it's warped the entire game around it. We're trying to make lists that have 1 wizard or 0 wizards, and it's like, well, what are you doing? Why would you have less than 2 wizards ever? Why wouldn't you have 3 spell casts in every single Stormcast list? We're one of the better armies for summoning too, right? Like, we can take advantage of this. We can get bonuses to summoning ourselves. We can reduce enemy summoning with the Knight Incantor. We have guaranteed dispel scrolls to get rid of some of this stuff. We have bonuses to banish. Are we the only banish bonus in the game? Right? Like, we can deal with this stuff.
Well, there's a couple more.
Yeah.
There's a couple, I think.
Okay. It's rare though. It's not like unbinding and dispel bonuses were. We are positioned well to deal with this stuff, and it still feels bad. It's just boring, especially because all of I'm talking a lot, so I'll make this my last point for a bit. All the spell lores are balanced against each other only on opportunity cost, right? It's like I can have 4 endless spells in Morbid Conjuration, or I can have 3 endless spells in Aetherwrought Machineries. Well, that by itself is already favoring the one that can summon more stuff every single turn. But then the Purple Sun, Shackles, all that stuff is just way stronger than some of the other stuff. Like, there's no there's nothing except the opportunity cost of not having something else. So like they're wildly imbalanced, right? And I don't know how you balance them. It's going to be way too hard for them to do that.
And the two out of the 3 that they ruled could move into combat because their ability is a move ability. Yeah. That they ruled that you could do that. 2 of them are in Morbid Conjuration. So like obviously that's like the OP one. You know what I mean?
Arguably the 3 best endless spells in the game.
Yeah, because you can tie someone up and they can't redeploy or they can't countercharge. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, they're all in the same lore. And that exacerbates the problem, but it's where a lot of the focus is being directed, right? We are complaining about Morbid because it is the best example of why this is not fun for the game.
Yeah, but it's all of them are a problem. Every single one is a problem. If you nerf Morbid Conjuration, people will just go to the next one. They'll go to Primal Energies, and then after that, they'll go to Aether Rot Machineries probably to get the reroll charges on countercharge and stuff. Like the problem isn't Morbid Conjuration is too powerful. The problem is endless spells as a concept are too easy to use and are completely warping the game around them because they add so much value. For every wizard basically summons 100 points worth of units every single time they cast a spell. That's what the game has turned into. More. Yeah, some of these units are great.
Or more.
Like
Gravetide is nuts.
Gravetide, Purple Sun, Ravnak, Smashing Jaw, even Burning Head, in my opinion, are straight up better than a lot of these like 100 to 120 point units. I would much rather have those.
Yeah.
Right. So this stuff is completely warping what other armies are doing, and it's really warping what Stormcast are doing. So that's one of the problems I'm having with list building. The other one,
but
thanks,
realistically,
Tyler.
Like it's not gonna just go away, right? Like the edition is built on this ability to be able to take the endless spells for free. They're not gonna suddenly have points, will they?
I don't think that would be the case. And I'm sure Paul's going to get into kind of what our thoughts on the fixes will be, but there needs to be a fundamental change to how endless spells are managed and interact in the game. And I don't think it's points.
Yeah, right.
I have 3 changes I'd like to see, but before we talk about what to do about it, go ahead, Mergonk.
I just want to manage Scuba Diver's comment. The Crownspine is the only other one that is useful if you don't run too many wizards. Scuba Diver, this Crownspine is actually, believe it or not, they made that manifestation as a response to manifestations, and it's straight up worse than just having more manifestations.
Yes.
Because think about it this way. You sacrifice all other manifestation lores, which typically have about at least 3 manifestations each to get the Crownspine out. So you have 1 manifestation. They can banish it, deal 6 damage to it, then shoot it and remove it off the board. And that is the only thing you can bring on the board. Purple Sun has that exact same rule. You can't banish it. You have to do damage to it, and then you have to shoot it. And the Purple Sun comes with 3 other manifestations that you can bring on the board.
So Ravnak has it too.
Yeah, the Crownspine is what, a 500 point unit? I'd rather summon 4 endless spells that are like 1,200 points worth of damage and utility rather than summon 1 manifestation that's 500 points.
It's not even, I don't even think it's worth 500 points anymore.
No, yeah, I'm just going off of like what it roughly was.
What it was before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think especially an army for us, we love priests in general. Like 3rd edition, like we always had a priest usually, and like now, like it's crazy that like our talks sometimes are like, well, what if we didn't go priest and we just took an extra wizard? Like that's a conversation that just shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, that's another point I want to talk about is priests. But before we get off manifestations, because I don't want to spend the whole stream talking about it. I mean, the whole point is we talk about list building. But I have 3 things I think should happen with manifestations that would probably get them to a point where they're no longer changing the whole game around them. They'll still be strong and good, but I don't think they'll like ruin the game. So I think first off, and I don't think this first one's controversial, no summoning with magical intervention. That's the dumbest thing, is being able to summon after your opponent banishes the same spell, you just summon it right back.
Yes.
There's no opportunity to banish it until your next hero phase, so you have to put damage into it. And it's also just like a lottery, right? It's like because you're casting at -1, it's less reliable, but it's like it's still probably going to happen, especially if you've got a +1 or +2 caster, or just techless, like, hey, guess what? Here's Purple Sun back.
If you're techless or a Croak or like a Slann or what's that death wizard? Arkan or something.
Yeah.
You just get it right out.
Or Reikenor, yeah. It's silly. Like, it's just not fun to play against. There's no interactivity. It just feels like you're wasting time shooting at pink horrors, except the pink horrors can also kill you, right? It's so stupid. The other change I would suggest is that each unit can only attempt to summon 1 per phase, right? So it's like you can't have techless summon 4 spells every single turn.
Yeah.
I think like it's cool that you can have like a 2-spell Night Arcanum or a Krondys and they can put out 2 manifestations, right? That's cool. But I'd rather it just be limited to 1 per wizard, right? Because it's like,
I agree.
Because more wizards means you're building wide as opposed to building tall. And a lot of balance problems in games like this usually come from building tall. Death Stars are a common problem. Like, the more power you concentrate into single units, usually the less balanced the game becomes, right? So I would prefer if they brought, I mean, it was a restriction in 3rd edition for a reason, just bring that back, right? That one could have some controversy. Like, the summoning with magical intervention, that has to happen. I don't think there's anybody debating that. But if you do have an opinion, let me know, because I'd love to hear what the argument against it would be. And the third one, I think this one, there's no real cost to summoning, like not in terms of points, but like the actual act of casting a spell. It's like it's risk-free. There's no, like, the only limitations are making the spell and the ranges, like the threat ranges that you're in. So it's like there's not really, like, why would I cast a spell from my spell lore? I have a manifestation that I can summon. There's no downside whatsoever, right? So I think what should happen is that when a manifestation is destroyed or banished, the summoner takes D3 mortal wounds. I think then there's like a risk reward kind of thing. It's like, I'm getting a free unit, but when it dies, I might die too.
Mm-hmm.
I will change that because so many armies have really good healing and rally that's not going to do anything. Yeah. What I would rather have is in that spirit of that, if you summon a manifestation and I banish it because it's a unit, it has combat stats, move, health, save, whatever. It's a unit. If I banish it, shoot it, fight it, destroy it, it's gone. You can't summon it again.
Yeah, it's dead.
It's dead. The unit is dead. You summoned a unit, you had your fun with it, it's dead. And it's a free unit. It's still really, really good. But once I've killed it, I've killed it. I don't need to keep worrying about this. So now it induces this metagame where you're not just spamming 4 manifestations on the board because they'll just die, and now you've lost. What are you going to do with all your wizards? You have 3 spells in your lore.
Okay.
Versus, and then you'll start playing, oh, maybe I can try to go for a double here, so I'll summon a manifestation here, or I'll countercast it here, and then hope my opponent doesn't charge it and kill it.
So here's my my rebuttal, and let me know what you think about this. First off, I think the D3 would be cool because it makes healing more important. And usually healing on foot heroes and stuff like that doesn't really matter. There's not a lot of chip damage left in the game anymore, so people don't really care that much about healing on heroes. Like, Vexillor is healing Krondys, and he's healing Karazai and the Star Drakes. He's not really healing 2 wounds off a Knight Relictor. Like, usually the heroes just die. So, like, I don't think it's that... Like, I don't think the fact that healing exists would make that a bad way to go. But I see your point. It does incentivize things like that, but maybe it could, those things could use incentivization, I guess is my point. But then about having only 1 manifestation, like you get 1 use out of it, it dies, it's gone, right? You'd have to redesign the rules so that they can act when summoned. Because the worst feeling in the world would be, I summon a manifestation, my opponent's turn, he kills it. That's it. That's the end of that thing's impact on the game. Like, you'd have to make them impact the game immediately.
Don't summon them in your face. Don't summon them in your opponent's face. They're units. They can't tie your own units in combat. Summon them the same way you would a hammer unit. If you put a hammer unit out there 9 inches away from your opponent or whatever from Deep Strike, it's reasonably expected that it'll die. So oftentimes when we play with, let's say, Evocators on Cats and Common Fall, like we did this with Fulminators, we often plan for, this is where my opponent's going to be. If I win the turn, I can move 10 and then charge them and then do that. That's how you have to play manifestations. If you're right now, what's happening is they're summoning their opponent's turn and they don't care if they die because they can keep summoning them, and it's essentially just blocking movement. But if you just summon them in your opponent's turn, they go away and they don't generate value. That's a misplay on your part.
I think a reasonable. Okay, I don't hate the idea because I think about things like the Jaws and the Molten Infernoth and the Purple Sun and the Kron Spine. But then I think about things like the Comet, which is very obviously meant to just slam into the opponent every turn. So like maybe specific spells could have a rule that's like when this dies, that's it. It's not coming back, you know, something like that.
Maybe.
Case by case basis, rather. I think that could work.
I have become very much convinced of the idea of splitting the difference and limiting the casting of each summon spell once per battle round. So if I get rid of it, I don't have to deal with it until your turn in the next battle round, but then it gets to come back at some point.
Maybe the round might be, because I'm cautious about things that last for the round, because the way player initiative goes in Age of Sigmar doesn't really make it conducive towards things working in round. Like Shock and Awe still doesn't feel great if you're going at the bottom of the round. So maybe it's like in the next hero phase it can't be summoned. You know, like the opponent's next hero phase it can't be summoned. Like I agree with you conceptually. Just the specific wording of it I think could be a bit better. Scuba Diver says, what about changing it so it starts?
Maybe they could add something like unlimited to summon of spells. Like summon a Comet could be unlimited. Chronomatic Cogs could be unlimited, but like Purple Sun is just once per day. You know
that makes
totally
sense. That makes sense.
Scuba Diver says, what about changing it to start 9 inches away and it can only move the number of inches rolled on 2 dice? So like the summoning value is what it moves, I guess. Or are you saying it's a 2d6 move? Russell says, you can only have 1 manifestation from your army on the table at a time. So okay, you can pick from 4 or 3 or 4 to choose from, but you can only summon 1 at a time. I feel like what's going to happen if you do that is nobody's ever going to summon the Shackles or the Gravetide again.
Yep.
all that does
just do Purple Sun all the time.
Yeah, it's like if you have a choice of 3 things and you have to pick one will always be the best, right? Like there's no way the other 2 will be worthy. Same thing happens with enhancements all the time in this game. When you can only pick one, you just pick the best one. You'll figure out which one the best one is and you'll pick that one. Yeah. No, it's a complex problem. I hope there's a change for it soon, because it really is impacting.
I hope that
list
the
building.
real change I want is they just rip that module out of the game.
Well,
yes.
You will not believe how fun the game is if you don't have to worry about endless spells. Like that's how they designed it. It's modular. Endless spells are a pain to buy. It's now like if painting your terrain and painting your army isn't enough, now you have to go around painting all these endless spells because at any moment you might need them. So everybody now has to buy them. They're not actually available in the store that much because they are all continuously sold out.
They are hard to find. This is true.
Yeah.
Get that module out of there, boy.
Yeah.
So I still think like if they went through the trouble of grouping everything, why doesn't the groups have points? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like you went through the trouble of grouping all of them. Why they don't have points? Like, what was the point of grouping them?
Like, they didn't have to be
That's
lords. It could have just been like you get to bring 1 or 1 per wizard or something. Like, they didn't have to be these elaborate lores that are like quite dynamic.
Dranguru asks, how would any of those changes make people play something else than Morbid? Yeah, that's another problem, right? Is like there's no opportunity cost between these things. And that's what David is saying is like if they have points, well, Morbid, okay, make it cost 60 points and make the other ones free. Maybe people would stop bringing Morbid then if they had to pay 60 points for it, right? That is a problem for sure, is that there's no opportunity cost for spells outside the game. Inside the game, there's no opportunity cost for casting them, right? Like you just cast as many as you can as often as you can. And the more you do, the better.
Yeah. The biggest risk you're taking is you're giving your opponents a free charge target, but ultimately you don't care because even if it dies, I'll just summon it again. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Back onto the main topic of list building. And so that's percolating up here when we're thinking about lists, right? Next thing we should talk about is Stormcast internal balance. This is a big topic, right? Because there's a lot to cover, not just for wizards, but also like just the distinctions between cavalry and infantry. And then there's also the long strike problem, where long strikes are the absolute best unit in our army. Not so good that you bring tons of them, right? Like if you spam long strikes, that's not good. But they are so good. A single squad of 6 is so good that you basically start every list with them. and they want to be in your general's regiment, which means you have to bring something that can bring long strikes. So you're thinking a War Master type, Estrella, Gavriel, Lord Aquilor if you're really desperate, but probably not. I'm not that desperate.
No.
So that's kind of the problem, is like we don't really have anything that can compare to long strikes, right? We need to shoot. I don't think Stormcast play this edition without shooting, especially because we have no finest hour during the opponent's turn like we used to. Like we used to be able to, charge Karazai in and then give him finest hour and then he could survive a turn. That's gone. We're durable on our turn, which is the least important time we want to be durable. Like it doesn't really matter how durable we are on our turn. So we need to shoot, and long strikes are head and shoulders above everything else in terms of shooting. So like you're gonna use them, which means you need to use a certain hero.
Yeah.
And so like a quarter of your list is done already at this point, and that starts then taking you into other avenues. And I do consider it a problem. It is a problem to have a unit that's so good that you can't play without it. And I think long strikes are the only one in our army that's like that. Some people would argue Krondis, but I'm not there yet personally.
No, I'm not there either.
In this season, I don't know.
Even right now, with manifestations the way they are, I am not convinced Krondis is a must-have. Although he can bring long strikes, and I do like that.
Yeah.
He's got so much going for him, but
he
I
also
still
has another -1 save ability, and I don't know. I've been playing with. I just can't not play with him right now. It's crazy.
He's great, no doubt. He's great, but he's not long strike great, right? They do like covering fire is stupid, straight up. A Stormcast use covering fire, probably the best. We have the best unit in the game to use covering fire on.
I try to do it every turn, no matter what. It's just more shooting.
I feel that long strikes probably need to go up in points, but not a lot. I think 180 would probably be fine. Paul and you and I have talked about this a lot. We have different opinions about priority targets and its application to shooting. But I think the reason why long strikes are the best unit in our book is because they're one of the only units with Rend 2. Our entire army went to Rend 1, and that feels bad. It is so bad.
Yeah. After playing with it, I thought, oh, Stormcast are getting nerfed to Rend 1. Okay, if everybody else is Rend 1, that's fine, right? No, all their armies are still like Rend 2, Rend 3. Like, if you've played against Chaos Chosen and they get a whole bunch of, like, they get anti-X from special assignment, and then they just roll on the table, Rend 3 Chosen. Cool, right? Like, other armies are still packing lots of Rend, and then it's like Retributors and Dracoth Riders. They're all just Rend 1 now. Same as a Palador, which is like, I like Paladors a lot, but they shouldn't be the same Rend as heavy armored elite dudes.
Yeah, it's wild.
So that's another problem. You're completely right about that, Jack. They give us the armor crunching, and they're not just Rend 2. They're Rend 3. If anybody is silly enough to bring a hero monster, they're Rend 3, which is fantastic.
I mean, the anti-hero is the MVP of that unit every game I play, probably. Like, they're always shocked, too, when you're like, oh, yeah, and it's anti-hero, and, like, because they just tear through. Hero monster, it's perfect, takes off half their wounds before you get in with your cav.
Well, there's a few exceptions, like Be'lakor, Mirror Shield, Star Drakes, but pretty much every, like, you're so stoked as a Stormcast player to see monsters on the other side of the table now. Gargants, beautiful, love it, let's do it, you know.
And that's not fun for our opponents.
No.
Right? Which ultimately makes it not good for the game. And I think that the way to address that is not to nerf long strikes into the ground. It's to give us better options for that point value.
Yeah, I straight up think our other shooting is overcosted. Even long strikes, if you compare them to what other armies are doing, and I know you shouldn't compare units 1-to-1 across the board, different context, different armies, all that stuff, right? But if you do this comparison, and people do this comparison because it's not that wrong to do it, long strikes are overcosted for what they do, right? The damage to wound ratio, the damage and health, and all that stuff, you crunch all the numbers, they're not the right cost. They should be about 10 or 20 points cheaper compared to what other armies are bringing. You look at stuff like Idoneth Reavers or Lumineth Sentinels or Jezzails, and it's like, yeah, long strikes have slightly higher max damage, and they're better at covering fire. I'll never deny that. But like just in terms of damage per point, they're not great. But it's fine, right? We pay the Stormcast tax. We shoot first always. We got stuff. The other shooting in our book, I guess our Legends pack, because there's nothing else in the regular book. It's just overcosted. 160 for crossbow adjudicators when Reavers are what, 140?
Yeah.
130.
130. Yeah, Ideneth Reavers are 130. That's what crossbow adjudicators should be as well.
The reason I'll say, like, we say long strikes aren't overpowered, I think they are in certain scenarios, and the reason it come across that way is because priority target. They're 3s and 3s now. If I'm shooting at a unit, even with covering fire that is not in the General's Regiment, the unit feels fine. Even a unit of 6 reinforced on 4s and 3s or 3s and 3s feels completely fine.
Yes.
It's when you do the priority target thing and they're on 2s and 2s with 12 shots auto wounding. Oh my god, that efficiency. And then you're just negating the minus.
13 shots.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, right. 13 shots. My bad. And then when you do it on covering fire again, and that unit's in the General's Regiment, you're on 3s and 2s. Like, that was our shooting stat last edition. Like,
with 6 crit wounds as well. Don't forget that. That does matter. When you're at -1 or -2 hit, that really matters.
But they were 60 points more.
Yeah.
Right? So now we have run and charge, retreat and shoot has been like amazing.
I like that too a lot. I think as this is after endless spells are toned down and the meta starts to settle again, I think you're going to see a lot of people pivot into these end of turn abilities that let you move, make a pile-in move, and then do some mortal wounds. There's a lot of that stuff in the game. Like tons of armies can do it. And it's actually way better than it seems, because chip mortal wounds at the end of the turn before you check objectives, that can straight up swing the game. If not, it's just like, oh, you put like a 5 wound hero on an objective. Okay, well, I'm Slaves to Darkness. I've desecrated that objective. You're taking D3 mortal wounds until you move off of it, which could be 3 turns because, you know, double turns exist and you want to hold it for another turn, right? Like, it's good. That, like, those little chip mortals add up. And in that world, people are going to try to lock shooting into combat. And then long strikes are just like, nah, see ya, I'm out. So I really like that. The retreat and shoot is really good.
Yeah, I think they're well.
Can SD make a competitive list without Krondys? Fish, we can. It's Estrella and Knight Arcanum. You're essentially rebuilding Krondys. It's like, I don't know if you've seen a movie called Moneyball, where it's like, we can't replace Krondys, guys. We can't replace him. What we can do is rebuild him in the aggregate.
We need wizards. We need, I think Stormcast competitive looks a minimum 2 casts, sometimes 3. That's just how it is. Krondys is a good way to get it. But there's other ways to get it. Yeah.
For sure. I'm gonna still try 4-1 Karazai.
Do it.
Just keep suffering.
Do it, man.
No, you got this.
Karazai is good. Karazai is good. We're talking a lot of Doomer about what we don't like in list building, but we'll talk about stuff we do like, and Karazai is definitely up there on the list of things to like.
We're in a much better position in 4th than 6 months ago.
Yes, we are.
I don't know about that.
I'm not sure. That's how it feels for me. I'm playing as much as possible, and that's how it feels. I don't know.
Yeah, because I completely stopped playing the last 6 months of 3rd edition.
It's
and I've played 40 games in the last 3 weeks.
Whoa.
Specific lists that we had at the end of 3rd were really good, but in general, as an army, yes, we feel a lot better for sure. Yeah, a lot easier to play too. Like I'm gonna miss Comet Fall and Anilana Grande and all these high tech, high skill plays, but I don't want to think that much anymore.
Gambling.
Oh my god! Look what they did to my boys, the Nihilators.
Okay, so on the topic of infantry versus cavalry, the Stormcast infantry is way too similar to the cavalry, right? It's similar amounts of models, even in some cases, right? 3 Paladors versus 3 Annihilators. We got lots of 3 stuff. Health pools are similar. Damage output is similar. There's only a couple units that do outstanding damage, which would be Decimators against the right targets. Fulminators fully buffed on the charge are very efficient. Reinforced Stormdrakes, very efficient, very impactful, but not efficient. Grand Hammers, obviously insane damage output. But the thing is, it's way too hard to use the infantry because it's so slow, and redeploy exists. So any kind of teleport or deep strike shenanigans is just immediately not less reliable than it was before. And it was it was already at a point where it was so unreliable I didn't want to do it. Right? Like, it's awful. But now
yeah, that's what like grinds my gears. The 7-inch strat was not a very popular strat. Like when you couldn't redeploy from the Lord Imperative, dropping an Annihilator down, that already like was not a very good strat. It wasn't like I liked it because I just like playing the unit. And they've taken that and made it worse in every way, and then increased the points on stuff that relies on doing that to get into combat.
Yeah.
We don't have any run and charge. It's weird for slow moving infantry. Like we don't have anything like, you know, Ironjaw's Mighty Destroyer, 3d6 charge. I think the only infantry that can reliably get in anywhere is prosecutors, I think.
Yeah, they're the best at it for sure. They get where they need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I mean infantry, I mean like, you know, the 5-inch move guys that don't have the 3d6 charge, right? Vanquishers are going to see play because they're a cheap screen. Questers are going to see play because they're just so efficient and they teleport. That's it. That's the end of the list of infantry. That's prosecutors technically are infantry, but you know, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the foot slug units, right?
Remember at the beginning, like when the first index got released, you were like talking about like 20, 30 Vanquisher lists, but then after you play it, then you play it and you're like, yeah, this just doesn't work.
No, Questers just do it better. They just do it better. And Questers are there's a limit on how many you can bring as well, because like some battle plans, there's way less objectives that you can quest mark.
I did all the numbers because I was trying to decide between Vanquishers and Questers in my competitive list, and their ability is only usable 38% of the time based on the 12 battle plans. And of that 38% of the time, only 18% of the time is it on objectives that you'll ever have a hope to get on.
That does not sound right. Every battle plan except one should have an objective that you can claim. It's just usually, it's not a good one. It's usually not a good one. It's like the opponent's home objective.
Right. It's, I crunched the numbers, man. It's tough. It's very tough. And you can only do it once per army. So you only ever bring one of them.
Well, you can bring
this is the kind of unit. You can, but I would bring this, like, if you're going to a GT, a lot of GTs have started doing this, where they tell you what plans are going to be there. You look at the plans, you see if you can at least get Questers on 4 of them, and that's when you bring them.
Yeah,
that's my honest opinion.
Well, I'm gonna press back on that, because I think Questers are so efficient and so good, even if you never step on a quest mark objective, they're just really efficient damage output, really efficient defense, and a built-in teleport. Yeah, it's like 6 shield annihilators are 360, same attack profile as 6 Questers who are 230. And they get to teleport.
Okay, I get what you're saying, right? And they get to teleport, which is fine. But for that same point cost, I can bring 10 Vanquishers that have more wounds and do more damage.
2 more health. And they don't do more damage. They only do more damage if they hit the exact right target. Whereas Questers are just good against everything. They just do the damage of 6 Reclusians that don't have crit mortals all the time. No priority targets required. They charge a monster, they charge a war machine, they charge cavalry, which is really what you want to be hitting, right? Like, I don't think we're having trouble hitting infantry right now. I don't think we're at a point where reinforced Vanquishers are worth bringing over Questers right now. I think we need cavalry damage, and Questers do that better. But they're both good. Like, I'm not saying reinforced Vanquishers are bad. I like both. But those are the only 2 infantry I would consider using, right? Like,
yes,
everything else is too slow. I'm not going to pay 160 points for an Imperatant so that I can roll a 1 and then my opponent rolls a 6 on redeploy. And that's going to happen. That will happen. It's not that rare, you know, it's just going to happen all the time. Like, yeah, you can put them in range to charge multiple targets. Why would I bother with that? Why would I bother with any of that when I can bring wizards who summon endless spells and cavalry that just moves on its own and doesn't need to bring a 160 point hero to use a once per battle ability to move D3 inches? It's, oh my god, it's so frustrating how much worse our delivery mechanism is. And that leads into a big conversation that we can say for another time about just cavalry versus infantry in general, right? Like, I've been talking about that on Discord lately. It might be a different live stream topic that we do. We'll see what happens. Okay, our battle formations. They all suck, right? Like, none of them are good. It's just different degrees of, like, suck. They're not as bad as our sub factions were, right? It's not that level. Like they're all usable and they're all impactful enough that you have to care about them. But it's not like a 6-up ward on an objective that you forget about sometimes, right? Like it's not that bad, but it's not good either. Usually it's one unit in your army that's going to benefit. If you're playing Sacrosanct, you're bringing Dracolines or Foot Evocators, which is... I still have to experiment with that build, by the way. We can talk about that later. If you're bringing Thunderhead Host, Questers, I guess, maybe Annihilators, like, okay.
Annihilators, Questers, Prosecutors, like...
Yeah. But you have to...
Well, not Prosecutors. They're Ruination.
Well, that's the thing, though, right? In order to get...
Oh, yeah, correct. Okay. Yeah.
So you have to layer in non-warrior chamber stuff to unlock that ability, and it's fine. Because I've played the Sacrosanct lists, I've played all of the sub factions to try to test them out. The warrior chamber one is fine. However, the units that go into it are too slow.
Yep.
They don't get where they need to be.
Yeah, I thought about because the Chariot is Warrior Chamber, but a lot of its damage comes from the mount attacks, right? So it's not going to benefit from the +1 to hit, which is
right.
Yeah, it's rough. There's nothing really that benefits that much from it. If Annihilators get good, then I can see Thunderhead Host seeing play. We were all extremely hot on Lightning Echelon when it was first revealed, and even going into the previews and everything. Like, but what do you guys think about it these days?
I mean, for playing it, it's not bad. It's just the 3+ on it is what feels bad. Like, yes. I don't know why there's like this weird sub condition for it. It just feels really bad. Like, the best use I've seen for it is actually the way Jack plays it. It's like Quicksilver draw on a Star Drake, where it's like the Quicksilver draw is just like your plan B.
Right.
Like, you try to get the Lightning Anklet on 3+ off, and you're like, okay, well, I'll pop my Quicksilver if I need it. Like, that's the only real use I've seen for it.
Yes, agreed.
Definitely the best.
Yeah, and the problem, and again, the sub-faction is in a vacuum. Our sub-factions are fine. They really don't stack up when you compare them to the other formation abilities that are available across the game right now.
Yeah.
But it's a mixed bag. Like, yeah, against something like Nighthaunt, it feels like very impotent. Like it feels really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
Against like Skaven, it feels really, really bad because Skaven, like the buffs on Skaven are freaking fantastic.
Yeah,
but that's fine though. It's never really been a Stormcast thing to be the big buffing army. We kind of always had like self-reliant units. Like Tempesters were the all-stars last edition because they didn't need anything. They just went where you wanted them. They did what you wanted. They didn't need any bonuses. The more bonuses you layer into an army, that means the more dependency on those bonuses exists. Because at the end of the day, they're going to balance it around doing a certain amount of damage maximum and a certain amount on average. And it's like, well, the more buffs you have, the more your base damage goes down, because then the buffs bring you back up to where you could be, right? Or it's completely imbalanced, like Witch Elves were. like that was stupid.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm actually overall with 3-up strike first. I feel like other armies have it on a 4-up. Like I haven't met anyone that just has like an automatic strike first. Even Manfred, when he charges, only gets it on a 3-up. So as long as it's like somewhat consistent, my problem would be like if everyone was just like striking first every time they charge.
Yes.
But we didn't get to do it. So
I think,
it's like it's fine.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with the 3-up strike first. I think what's holding that formation back are the units that get to benefit from it. Because
the hero you have to bring for the units.
And the hero.
Yeah,
so like you can't just bring a pack of fulminators in order to use the 3-up strike first. You have to bring everything that enables that. And I'm very down on Dracoths. I'm very sad.
Yeah. We mentioned this today, I think, but it's like Dracoths are fine when you consider non-reinforced cavalry. Like, I feel good if I have 2 Dracoths.
Sure.
And I'm facing down 5 Cavalos, Death Riders, 5 Dawn Riders, 5 Hex Rates, whatever, opponent. Even Vanguard sometimes in the right scenario. I feel okay. It's when you reinforce cavalry that the shortcomings of Dracoths compared to other cavalry become glaringly apparent.
Yeah.
That's when like the difference the difference that difference becomes way larger, and that's what I'm hoping to mitigate. I think that's why they're a little overcosted.
Having 5 fewer health than a 15 wound unit, I keep saying wounded health, 10 health versus 15 health is not that big a deal, right? Like, it is a big deal, but it's 15 health. It's like, with the way damage works in this game, you're probably going to overkill more often than it's going to matter. It's just, that's the way it is. But when you start doubling that and it becomes 20 health difference, 10 health total difference, 10 health swing, that becomes more significant. That's the difference between a unit being alive, being allowed to power through, or surviving a covering fire, or having models left to rally, or, you know what I mean? Like, it is a big difference. Just the way damage is in this game. It's in a narrow band. It's not like there are units that do thousands of damage, right? Everything is in like double digits for the most part, low double digits at that.
Yeah, and it's not just health. It's, you have the same control as other cavalry. So you're giving up control, you're giving up health. If you lose a model, you're giving up more damage than them losing. You losing 5 wounds worth in your 20 health unit is more significant than them losing 5 wounds in a 30 wound unit.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a little like low on them.
Well, that's why I've pivoted to Dracolines, because I love reviving them on my turn and then in my opponent's turn with the Arcanum. I love that. If the wizard meta wasn't a thing, or if the long strike problem didn't exist, I would totally bring a Lord Arcanum on Dracoline as well, because Dracolines with a Lord on Dracoline do Fulminator level damage. So they have all the durability of Dracolines with all the damage output of Fulminators. It's fantastic.
Yay, Legends units, guys.
Well, yeah, and that's and again, like the problem that I have with that is that's fine, and it's good that Dracolines are different than they were before, and that they're good. We've only got 9 more months with them, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
I have a feeling at some point they'll do the Croxigor. They'll bite the bullet like they did on the Croxigor and up the Dracots to 6 wounds.
They've got to, because
I think so too. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, if the 6 wound thing had gone away across the game, then I would come to terms with it. But like, all the 6 wound models stayed 6 wounds except us, and I don't understand why.
I think my other issue too is like the way power through is in this game. Like Dracots are supposed to be like the heavy cavalry.
Yep.
Of like everything in the Mortal Realms. Like it's them, and like you can't power through like like Trogs. Like, are you serious? Like a Dracoth cannot power through a troll. Like, does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Should be able to power through.
A Croxigor can power through Dracots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the way, giant dragon. There's a lizard coming through. It's crazy. Okay, all right. So the battle formations they're all weak. They're all restricted. Because we have to mix units. Stormcast are not an army that has really had much success from spamming a single chamber or spamming a single conclave. We mix our units together. So if you have bonuses that affect specifically one unit, or one type of unit, you're usually going to have lists where it's like, okay, I've got Lightning Echelon that's really only going to affect my Storm Drakes, or just my Dracoths, or just my Star Drake. I'm going to have Sacrosanct that only buffs my Dracolines. I'm going to have Vanguard Wing, so that's just there for the long strike sometimes, right? I don't want to bring a Priest. I'm going to have a 3-up translocation on them. Cool, that's it. Sometimes you bring Paladors too, but like, none of these things are so strong that you make the list around them. They're like little flavor that you add at the end, which doesn't seem to be consistent with how other armies are designed right now, where the battle formations are way less restricted, usually more powerful, and usually more flavorful as well.
Yeah. I have a feeling that these got written first. They were play tested extensively. They took those lessons learned from this and applied them to the subsequent indexes that were written, but they never went back and addressed those issues with Stormcast.
Yeah, it's a time thing. A lot of armies feel like first drafts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you look at, Nighthaunt have army-wide run and charge. Cool. What are the other battle formations? Nobody knows, because you're never going to see them. Because you have army-wide run and charge.
Yeah, never.
Well, it's army-wide run and retreat and charge,
yes,
right?
My bad. It's even better. Yeah. It's that should be obvious. That's going to be too strong. It should just be obvious. But anyway, okay. Next topic for what's affecting our list building. Battle tactics. How much have this season's battle tactics affected what units that you're thinking about bringing?
100%.
A lot, yeah. It's same thing like it's like same thing at the when battle tactics get a little bit harder? Was like the last year of third edition?
Season 3, yeah. Just the last
Season
year. Because
okay.
they were a joke before that. It didn't even matter.
Yeah, so it feels like it still feels like season 3 where like you're picking units where it's like, okay, I need tactics kind of done. I just wish hunters weren't 130. Like, can you imagine if hunters were like 110 points? Like
100.
That'd be insane. 100, yeah, like wow. Like,
we don't have anything under 100 points except Griffhounds, or like 110. It's such an awkward number. I end up with 100-point gaps all the time.
Yeah.
Aether Wings.
No.
Oh my.
That's not a real unit.
Not 90. Gotta go to 50 for that.
40. Second edition. Let's go.
Yeah. 6 wounds. Like Griffhounds are now 12 wounds.
Look, there's no ally problem anymore. Aether Wings can be 40 points and Ideneth won't spam them. It's okay.
Yes.
Easiest slay the entourage you could ever give your opponent. Here's your free 4 points.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, so scoring battle tactics ourselves. But you want to avoid putting cheap chaff in your general's regiment because you don't want to give your opponent a free slay the entourage, right? I think that's a good rule of thumb to have. It's like, unless you can't avoid it, like I've got a list that's coming up that has Griffhounds in the general's regiment, and I view that as like a bad thing. It's like one of the weaknesses of the list. But maybe my opponent will forget which unit of Griffhounds because there's 2, so that's all I'm hoping for. Okay, so battle tactics. There are for Stormcast, there's 3 that just require movement, no engaging with the enemy, just movement. And I love all 3 of those tactics, and it's one of the reasons I'm trying to incorporate a teleporting unit into every single one of my lists. Like, I know you can't score take the flanks with the teleport, but when you score reclaim the realms 1 turn, which is just be in all 4 quadrants, and then next turn you're just set up to do take the flanks, right? And then you can also, what's the last one? Take their land, right?
Yeah.
One teleporting unit basically scores those 3 tactics for you every single game, which means you need to just pick 2 of the remaining 5 to score, which is very easy. They're situational, but you will find the right situation for them. Slay the entourage almost every time, right? Like with long strikes.
Seize the center at the end of the game if you can.
Seize the center. There's the one where you have to take an objective from your opponent, right? Like there's just so many that are so easy to score. I'm finding 5 out of 5 battle tactics every game. It's like once I stopped getting outplayed, like once I got to a point where I started making plays that my opponent couldn't counter with like the battle tactics I'm trying to do, I'm scoring 5 out of 5 every time. Like, not guaranteed, but reliably 5 out of 5, which means, it becomes a game about primaries then. Which
I think when I dropped the tactic this season, it's literally just been because I forgot to like read the whole thing.
Yeah, once you get used to it, Stormcast, I think, are one of the best armies for tactics. We do it very well. Other armies are getting like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. We're 5 out of 5. Like, we are very good at this.
I think the average was 4. Because there's a lot of armies that can't do it. Like, I'm playing OBR, I have no idea how to do like a turn 1 tactic. Like, what do I do?
Seize the center, bro.
Well, especially because my kid plays OBR,
Dangerous.
so I play against OBR a lot, and the situation becomes you have to skew your list to a turn 1 battle tactic that doesn't leave you wildly out of position. And
because it's OBR is now as elite as Stormcast is, but without like that mobility to so like I have to spread my units out just so I can score some tactics like take the flanks or reclaim the land or something.
Slaves are really suffering from that too. When they have to put 250 points of knights on a flank to score take the flanks, it's like, okay. The game's over.
Taking Furies?
Like, they're all taking Furies.
You take Furies.
The problem with taking Furies is only Bellicor unlocks them, and he's a War Master, so they are giving away Slay the Entourage.
They're giving away the Slay the Entourage,
every time.
And if I see Bellicor with Furies, okay, my long strikes are going to be on the table, on the flank, hopefully in range to covering fire.
Yep.
Okay, so tactics are easy for us, and so what are you guys including in your list to help with tactics? Are you guys using teleporters too? Because I don't really see a lot of that. I feel like I'm the only one doing that in our little squad.
I've been just using Scions to do realms turn 1, and then flanks turn 2, because as long as you're far enough away, like sometimes I'll do it with a Vigilor unit and be like hassling them a bit, and then it's opportunity cost, right? Like they have to come get me to make sure I don't get the easy tactic next turn, but they don't want to because I'm way back in the corner. But I'm also shooting them, so
you're baiting them. Just like if they come get you, they'll be stuck there for the majority of the game.
And also 5 Vigilors, or against a lot of the armies right now, like our 3-up save just across the board. Like they don't kill it the first try, so then they get like kind of stuck in with it.
If you get in cover, -1 to hit, it's not going to be
huge.
Well, not in melee, but against other shooting.
Wait, cover isn't melee anymore?
No, because when you're an attacking unit, you ignore 3 inches. You ignore 3 inches in front of you of terrain.
That only applies for behind cover. So if the defending unit is wholly on the terrain, or wholly in the wood, they get -1.
Okay, I haven't looked into that in a while. Usually it's just behind cover these days, and not a lot of people. With the terrain I play on, a lot of it becomes impassable, right? Because just the size of it becomes a medium piece, and it's usually you can't land on it anyway. So behind is usually what I care about.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like Vigilors. I'm thinking Skybolt Judicators can also fill that role. They'll do a little more damage than Vigilors. They won't give you the +1 hit. But I kind of like that idea of like a side shooting unit. It's not holding an objective necessarily. It's just holding the flanks just to score battle tactics. And if your opponent kills it, you can easily trade up in that scenario, right? Because they're coming in to kill 140 points. You're going to respond and kill a lot more than that. It's pretty good.
Most of them to spread out too.
Yeah. Okay. How are we feeling about drops? Are we still like hard on the 2-drop train, or are we going up 3, 4? Do we like? I'll start. I don't care about drops anymore. I'll have 10 drops. I don't care. I want more information. I want the best deployment. I don't care about going first or second. I'll play both. That's where I'm at right now.
I think it's more like, for me, it's more like depends on what army I'm fighting. And if I if I have a 2-drop army and I lose the 2-drop, the attacker, defender, whatever, I'm just I'll deploy in a way where I get the most information possible. Against some armies that are like very like what everyone's doing, right? Everyone's just like taking the most efficient unit. They're taking a 6 block or 10 block and just running them off the board. In that instance, Stormcast doubles are still very, very deadly, and I want that option.
I'm so glad everybody's getting so greedy with this General's Regiment. They're trying to have as few drops as possible. They're cramming that regiment full of delicious targets for priority target long strikes. Feels so good.
I think
I will say though. I will say that the games that I have lost are usually ones where I don't have control of priority. Like I'm given first, and doubles definitely still matter. Like they're not as bad to take, I think, as everyone thought going into this. Now that we've played a lot more games, like they're actually great to take. Losing the 4 points doesn't really matter.
It's also because armies are more elite now. Like by the end of 3rd, we were bringing like a good 2 or 3 hammers, 3 or 4 screens, utility heroes. Like lists don't look like that anymore because all the points went up. The list building is sort of weird with the heroes and everything. To keep throwing screens and have that insurance isn't always likely, so it's kind of always better to build for at least a 3-drop.
Yeah, that's what I've gone to. I was originally really focused on keeping, because we almost nobody is going 1-drop. It's very difficult, right, to get 1-drops done anymore. And so 2-drop has become the new standard. And I worked really hard to try to build 2-drop lists. And I found that restriction heavily increased the difficulty of like battle tactics and opened me up for priority targets. And I've just gone to 3-drops.
Yeah, I don't like putting anything besides long strikes in my General's Regiment unless I can help it, or unless I can't help it. Like if that's the only way I'm bringing Paladors to that list, okay, fine. Good luck killing 30 wounds on a 3-up.
Yeah, and the -1 to wound helps, and you're gonna bring them back anyways. So
exactly,
it doesn't really matter with Paladors, to be honest.
I'm trying to, I still consider drops. I said I don't care, and that's mostly true. Like, I don't care whether I choose to go first or not. But it's like, if you have the option to be lower drops, why not? Right? It's why not?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is because you can just bring more Knight Arcanums and summon more spells.
Yeah. Yes. So, but honestly, 3-drops isn't even that bad. Like, if you actually look at like meta breakdowns, like 3-drops is essentially like a 2-drop list. Like, you're more than not, you're probably matching your opponent if you go 3-drops.
Yeah,
like 3-drops isn't that bad as it's about to be. I think people just like having 2-drops because it's the same first drop like feeling, but 3-drops really isn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
But guys, like Paul brought up, like getting more information. How many people here have used the single unit drop once you know that you're going to be out dropped?
Everyone. And I was just about to mention that. I hate it. Yeah. I hate this game mechanic.
I think it's great. Why?
I hate it because it takes something that I thought was going to be simpler and easier, which is deployment, and it makes it so much more complicated. Right? Because as soon as you know you have fewer drops than your opponent, you know your opponent's just going to like max drop you. They're just going to give you no information at all. And then you're like, oh, well, okay, now I have to care which regiment did he split up, so I can split up the same number of regiments to keep the information game on track. Because if they're splitting up a regiment with 3 units, well, I can split up a regiment with 3 units as well. And I'll still beat them on drops. So why wouldn't I do that? Why would I just hand my opponent this information? Why would I deploy with less information? And it makes it so much more complicated. I thought this was supposed to be simpler, this whole deployment phase with the regiments and everything, and it actually made it more complicated. There's more thinking involved in deployment now than there was before. And it happens every single game, because one person is going to have less drops or is going to deploy last. So as soon as you know you're that person, you will immediately just fish for as much information as possible. There's no downside.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
I like it if I'm playing 1 game a day. If I have to play 5 games over a weekend and do that, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I
Honestly,
do think
I haven't seen it that much, to be honest. Like, I've done it a couple times, but I haven't had that many opponents do it all that much. A few times.
No, you don't have to, Don Tran in chat. No, you don't have to drop altogether. It is optional. You can choose to drop units in a regiment 1 at a time or all at once. So you could split up your general's regiment into up to 5 drops if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be 1. Which, yeah. All right, moving on. Legendless lists. Are you guys building these right now? I know James is. He's not on the stream today. He is hardcore. The only non-legend unit he's using, the only non-Thunderstrike unit James is using is Long Strikes, because you just can't replace them. But otherwise, he's Thunderstrike all across the board. He refuses to use Palladors. None of that. Lots of people are doing this. I don't think it's most people, but I think lots of people are doing it. Partly out of protest for Games Workshop's terrible consumer practices. But like, guys, you're still buying the models. Like, who are you kidding? Right? Like, they got your money. They don't care. Right? So just drop that argument. You don't need it. Yeah. How do we feel about Stormcast if we're not using Legends units?
I don't think we're actually bad if we don't use non-legend units. I mean, technically, my Karazai list is a non-legend list.
You don't have Estrella? I know you don't. Obviously,
no,
it's Karazai.
Good Karazai. Yeah.
I think my Grandis list also isn't.
Right. Yeah. Same. If you build a non-legend list, it revolves around the War Master model.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's literally Estrella or Gabriel. That's like what you're using.
I would say there's like maybe like a really small exception for the Lord Celestin on Star Drake. Maybe, but 90% of the time, because of that long strike requirement, you are building lists with a War Master. So Karazai, Grandis, Indrasta.
Bastion, maybe.
Does Bastion take long strikes?
Yeah,
he takes anything.
He's all Stormcast. He's just way overpointed.
Yeah.
He's also not a War Master, which is good.
Yeah.
True. Okay, yeah, basically, and no one's taking this lesson Prime, right? I don't think.
No. Good God, no.
The problem is, even because of the meta we're in right now, even if Bastion was less than Estrella, you still wouldn't use Bastion, because that 20, 30, whatever points is just, you also get a wizard.
Right.
You would just use Estrella. You still use Estrella.
Yep.
That's where I'm at right now. If I'm not running Karazai, Estrella's in every list.
A lot of my lists start with her. After they change the magic stuff, hopefully, I think Gavriel's going to come out to play a lot more. I was doing some early play testing with him, and he doesn't feel terrible, right?
Being able to terrible in infantry.
Yeah.
Because your opponent... isn't likely
Gabriel
to
was
redeploy
warrior
away
chamber.
from
Is he not warrior chamber?
He is any infantry.
Any infantry.
any infantry.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
He can bring
Right.
foot evocators.
Yeah.
He can't buff them,
You can bring.
but he can bring them.
He can't. He can only give the 3d6. Pick the two best
Warrior.
for warrior chamber infantry, but he's still good. He's like a good delivery, and your opponent may not redeploy away.
Yeah.
I think you're running Gabriel. I do like the concept we were coming up with. It just Gabriel, 6 launch strikes, and then everything else in 2 different regiments.
Yep.
Yes.
Because you could just drop Gabriel with decimators or whatever you want to drop with anyway. The point is you don't have anything that's easily killed in
Yes.
in the general's regiment.
And if your opponent wants to kill Gavriel to score a tactic, you know what? Go for it. You're not killing something that actually matters.
Right.
Whereas the exact opposite problem, if you have Andrasta, like if Andrasta dies, that matters. She's expensive. She's impactful. You don't want her to just be killed off and your opponent score tactics at the same time. Gavriel's basically a screen. You know, he's like, he's a distraction piece, which, yeah. So if Wizards get nerfed, I think he can come into play. Okay.
I like him.
How do we feel about priests? Right now in the Magic meta, but in general also, because before we realized how stupid Magic was, we were having a discussion. Maybe we don't need a priest at all.
Yeah, I think that's so disappointing because Ionis looks so much better once his meta's dead.
Yeah.
Once they kill the magic meta, Ionis becomes viable. But right now, even when we're considering a priest, we're like, oh,
It
hey,
needs to
do
do
we want
something
the Lord
else.
Veritant? Do we want the Lord Veritant because he has an unbind? And I never
Yeah.
thought I'd say that.
Which is
Like, it was
insane.
never really.
Why?
How crazy
and
is it
Ionis
that
is just as bad.
Lord Relictor is the worst priest in our army right now?
No, I would disagree with that.
I
And he's not
came
bad.
down to-
He's not bad
No,
at all.
He's not
He's
bad.
just the worst.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely. Yeah, I still would rather take if I had the 10 points. I think I still rather take the Veritant because the -1 can matter, and the Unbind definitely matters. Because every game I played against, somebody's had at least has at least 2 wizards, 2 casts.
Yeah. Even if all she
100%.
does is banish, unbind, and give -1, that's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Chanting is so unreliable. It's
Yes.
so especially counter chanting, because the way, and I think they're going to change this, but modified ones do nothing on a chanting prayer. So if you roll a 2 on a prayer and with a -1 it goes down to 1, it doesn't matter how many ritual points you have, the prayer fails. Which is yeah. So the only way to get around that is with Lord Relictor, and like counter translocate is cool. Like that's a fun trick. Really messes up people's tactics, but because it's spend a command point and then you had to bank ritual points ahead of time probably, and then you have to also roll a 2+. Like it's just too random for me to ever make a strategy around that. So it's like for me, Night Relictor.
yes.
Because he reduces wards by 1, which is an insane effect. Like you could have a 120 point hero that just did that, and I would use that hero.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also a priest.
Yeah.
So he's
If
got
you
that.
don't think, anybody listening to this doesn't think wards are that big of a deal, please go find your local Gits player, ask them to play trolls, and your opinion will change.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah. I am deeply regretting taking the Lord Relictor over the Knight Relictor from my Old Town Throwdown list. Deeply regretting.
You will kill 3 trolls in 3 hours, and you will want to rip your hair out.
The ward reduction is actually really, really good. How many other armies are doing that, by the way? Is there a lot
Nighthaunt is.
Yeah.
Nighthaunt can get a 5+ on demand, and because
Well,
No,
Warrior's
I mean-
reduction.
I mean
The
reducing
reduction.
enemy wards.
OBR has it
OBR
with
has
the
it on their
Shrieker.
spell.
on their Shrieker.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah. Want to
Nothing
say
comes to mind.
Soulblight has it? I think not Soulblight, but like Vermilord Shamblers, the corpse
Yeah.
card and 20 zombie regiment. They have
Oh
a
yeah,
12
yeah,
inch
yeah,
aura.
yeah, yeah.
12 inch aura of subtract 1 from wards.
It's rare. And it feels, I remember when we did the OBR review for 3rd edition, we said it feels really good for an elite army to have a -1 ward effect, right? To shut off wards as an
Yes.
elite army to make sure all your damage goes through
critical.
feels good. It feels right. And Stormcast have this effect and it feels really good. It's so
OBR
good.
Stalkers.
Stalkers reduce wards?
OBR Stalk-
Okay.
Stalkers have a face that you pick in the combat phase, and you
Yeah.
say no ward rolls can be made.
Okay. Yeah, so it's good for Stormcast, like elite armies. It makes sense. But that effect is so good that we're honestly considering Lord Castellant. As soon as this magic meta is over, he's a serious consideration. Because removing a 5+ ward is a ridiculous damage increase. It is the best buff we can get in the game by far.
Yes.
It's huge.
And also, you could just look at your you're practicing for like a tournament, like see what your mission. Usually, tournaments now are all like on board releasing missions like prior to like the time. So like if you know you're gonna play a lot of like if 4 of the missions all have an objective in the center that you're gonna be fighting over, okay, that objective is always yours because whatever you decide to put on it is just gonna die.
Yeah, every army has wards now, right? Like I can't. Stormcast might be the only one that just doesn't get them as easily.
Innately, yeah.
Yeah, we have to activate them properly. Most armies just have them now. Even Fire Slayers just have wards.
Yeah.
And it's the units you really need to kill that always have them. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And waiting late game and then translocating the Relictor into range of something you really need to kill that has a 5 ward has just been working wonders. It's the best.
You bank ritual points, and then eventually he's somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So like
it's within 12, so it works with the 9-inch. The 2-up. It's fantastic.
And he can bring Griffhounds. How cool is that?
Yeah, he can bring hounds. The best unit in our book. 80 points.
Once this magic meta is over, I think we might have a Knight Relictor problem, as we have a long strike problem. But he's not quite there yet. He's really, really good. Yeah, Lord Veritant right now is looking good. I think there's strong argument to including Lord Veritant as well. But priests in general, I don't think we need them. Because prayers are so unreliable, what units do we really want to teleport? If we want a teleporting unit, we can bring a Zephyros, we can bring an Arcanum on Griff Charger, we can bring Aquilor even in a pinch.
Wing.
Vanguard Wing gives you a 3-up teleport, which you can use after retreating, right? Well, they might fix that, but there's not even that much teleporting required these days. No. Because our army is now 18-inch range max for the most part, you don't really need to like teleport long strikes out and then shoot something past a corner. You know, like you can't do those plays anymore. So like, I think go ahead.
You can't teleport. You can't teleport after retreating. They're both core abilities.
It doesn't matter. The unit's not using it. The player uses Vanguard Wing.
Yeah. It's not pick a unit to use this ability. It's player pick a target unit.
Disagreement on this. I don't think that's certainly not how it's intended. I think it's hard to pull that off in a tournament.
I don't even think there's any.
You gotta get the TO to come over and deal with it, and
there's no practical effect of it even because you can just retreat. Everything that can use Vanguard Wing can already retreat and charge.
Yeah, retreat and shoot.
Yeah, as well. Like it probably won't matter. Yeah, so I don't think priests are necessary. The one time I would really consider using a priest is like Krondis, 10 crossbows. You want to translocate the crossbows around in case they get stuck in combat. Like that's the best use of translocate right now is getting units out of combat.
Yeah, I even thought about just going double wizard in my Karazai list just because I don't know if spells are gonna be nerfed by the time my GT happens. I'm like I almost rather just have double casts, just cast 2 morbid things a turn.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I feel so bad for priests because priests are supposed to be like our winners and like they're just not. I rather have Arcanum for the same points.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the current meta, which is mostly what we predicted it was going to be, except for we didn't think Endless Spells would be this big, but we thought Night Haunt, Ogres, Lumineth. What else is at the top that we thought Cruel Boys would be good. Cruel Boys turns out to be way too inconsistent. I think I predicted this part of it accurately in that competitive players generally don't want to play an army that is all 2s and 3s on all their abilities. Like everything in Cruel Boys requires a 2-up or 3-up roll, and it's the most frustrating thing to play. So I think it's just because it's just not fun, people just won't play it that much. So even though the army is strong, it's got consistency problems. Okay, so Soulblight is a problem, right? Trolls specifically?
I'll say Soulblight, not Soulblight specifically, but Direwolves I think are a problem. 140 points or 20 wounds of run and charge, and easy 5-up ward, you can remove the beast from them. I think it's a little too overkill.
Yeah, it's funny. They nerfed Direwolves like crazy, but they're still really good.
Well, because Battle Shock doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, cool. You just keep living.
Yeah.
So it seems like the meta is high wound density in single units. Right. People are
high
bringing
wound density single units and manifestations.
Yeah. And also spamming undercosted units. I would be obviously it's too early to say for sure, but I think there's some outliers. Dawn Riders seem a little bit undercosted. Ogre Gluttons Hex rates seem a lot undercosted. Ogre Gluttons seem a lot undercosted.
Yes.
There's a few other units. I don't want to make too many predictions because it's so early, and there's going to be a big change to spells coming soon, and maybe other stuff as well, right? So it's hard to really know what's worth changing right now because you want things to settle, right? Like you make a change somewhere else and you want things to settle and see if it's still a problem. Maybe if they change something, Ogre Glutton spam isn't a problem all of a sudden anymore. Maybe something else comes up and then no, it'll still be a problem. But
it's a fundamental points issue. Dawn Riders are 30 points too cheap. Hex rates are 30 points too cheap.
Like 40 or 50, I'd say, for
the
hex
thing
rates.
Is, but the problem is, I can understand the Dawn Rider problem and the hex rate, or the Nighthawk being a problem in general. Ogres doesn't bother me too much because it's sure, eventually they will have to go up, but if they just change the rules and fix the meta, we can tech into anti-infantry lists and actually do a lot to them. We can do things like kill their heroes, make them charge 1d6 and stuff like that. There's no counter to stuff like that in Nighthaunt. You can't tech into Nighthaunt because your Rend doesn't work, and that's their main balancing mechanic against spam.
Yeah, the 5-up saves on ogres, it's a weird place to be a 5-up save right now because you're vulnerable to anti-X, whereas if you're a Fire Slayer, you don't care. You're a 6-up. It literally doesn't matter if they have Rend 1 or Rend 2. But ogres, it does matter because they don't also have the wards. They're just wounds, and every point of save actually does end up mattering for them just because of how effective health scales. So anti hurts them, and if they go hard into infantry, which is the worst type of unit to be right now, yeah, we'll pivot into that, right? I'm a lot more.
And believe it or not, that's why Soul Blight Direwolves are so effed up because they're beast. There is no anti-beast in this game, and Direwolves, despite having no armor, have a 4-up save.
Yeah, I don't understand the save on them.
That was weird. That was weird.
Yeah. What happened? How did Direwolf get a better save than an ogre?
How do Direwolves have a better save than Black Knights?
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what they're doing with that unit.
How do Direwolves have not the same save as Gryph-hounds?
Yeah,
they're dead dogs. How are they more survivable than living dogs? Yes. Anyway. Okay, so what else is at the fringes of the meta? Because I'd say that stuff's at the top, and that's probably going to be would you consider Stormcast at the top, where we're in the crosshairs for nerfs? No. I don't think so.
I would say top 10, but not in the crosshairs. I don't think.
I think we're just short of the top 5 right now. I think we're 6 or 7.
Sure.
I think our win rate's at 44% was the last data I saw.
That's the new player thing.
I'm surprised it's that high.
Yeah, I would expect it to be 38, but I would say we're at a 50 for a good player.
I think the only nerfs we might see is the complaining about long strikes and Paladors, but I don't think we're gonna get hard nerfs. I think there are some armies like Nighthaunt, everything, your whole army's going up 15%. Easily. That's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. I just want I think there's a bunch of oversight that things really just need tweaks at. Dawn Riders are too cheap. Trolls are too cheap.
Yeah, Direwolves are too cheap. Yeah, stuff like that.
I can see them.
Direwolves.
Go ahead.
Piss me off. No, it just pissed me off. It's you can just spam them. It's I have better wound density than Fire Slayers. And, you would think they're beasts, 4s and 4s, 4s and 5s. Nah, they're 3s and 4s. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, they hit better than a horse. So for some
reason.
They
hit like elves.
Yeah.
They hit like elves. Cool.
They have the saves of orcs and the accuracy of elves and the wound density of dogs with wards they're undead. Stupid.
Somebody really likes them. Someone went to bat for them at that studio.
Somebody at the studio thinks it's cool and fun to have an army that wins games by moving useless trash bodies around long enough that you're and living long enough that your opponent can't kill you fast enough. They think this is a fun way to play the game and also to play against. They're wrong on both counts. Okay, it is not fun. Soul Blight should have a different dimension to them because there's been you try to get somebody into the game and they look at this cool vampire army and they're like, oh, I want to play that. That looks so cool. And then you have to sadly explain to them that the way this army plays is by bringing a bunch of zombie dogs and dancing around objectives and just dying slowly and not interacting really with your opponent.
It's literally the same. They've recreated the 3rd edition problem. They've just switched out zombies for dogs.
It was always dogs. Let's be real.
It was
Just ask
zombies
Rob.
with a 5-up. No, zombies with a 5-up bounce back was actually pretty good.
It was,
zombies
yeah.
have been nerfed to a 6-up, and now it's the same list. It's Virkos all over again. Like,
yeah.
We could literally republish our 3rd edition review for Soulblight, and it would still be valid.
Yeah. Okay, Battle Scroll soon, right? They're not going to wait till September or October or whatever. They're going to release it this month, probably this week, maybe next. Probably.
Yeah, probably because 40K is due like this week, I think.
40K was last week, wasn't it?
It was. Oh yeah. You're right. Yeah. It was. No, yeah. You're right. They didn't do points, but they did do the errata last week. You're right.
Yeah. So probably Thursday this week, maybe the week after, and maybe we're just completely wrong and it'll be September. But I hope it's soon, for sure. Okay. We always get questions about these guys, so I just wanted to quickly talk about our thoughts on these 5 units: Krondys, Ionis, Andrasta, Karazine, Stardrakes. People love centerpiece models. They love War Masters and building lists around them, which I don't, but Krondys is amazing, right? Like, yes. He's just so good. I don't think he's S tier. Like, he's not a problem for our Eternal Balance. He's not an auto-include. He is just really good and the right cost for what he does.
Yes.
Yeah, and his Ren 2 attacks versus the other dragons. I mean, Karazai has them too, but it makes a huge difference in this meta.
Yeah.
He's a monster that hits on 3s instead of 4s, which feels great. Yeah. None of his attacks are companion, which means Vigilors can buff him, which is great. They're a natural combo together. He gives them Ren 2. They give him Ren +1 hit without all-out attack. He's great.
Yes. He's great.
I wish he also had Krondys Rampage. That'd be good if he was able to roar or tail. Because situations where you want the roar.
Oh, you mean Karazai? Yeah, no, we're talking Krondys still.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. I jumped ahead.
We'll
Krondys is fine.
Krondys is great. For sure.
It's also his spell. Like, people always forget how powerful that is. And for our army being so elite, like getting a -1 save on something when you're going in to kill it, like, it's the same thing that we were talking about like the -1 to ward. It's so powerful. And when we don't have a lot of units and they're all super elite, like, we have to finish the job, and he makes that happen.
Yeah. Yes. He reduces variance is what he does, which is good. Yeah, I don't think Krondys is going to get nerfed, and I think he's still going to be just as good even after they change the spell nonsense, because his War Scroll spell is great, and he's like really good at casting our spells, and all 3 of our spells are good, honestly.
All of our spells are good. Yep.
Even Lightning Blast is situationally good.
Yeah, you can still bring 3 wizards and hit 3 different units for D3 mortal wounds each. Every single round. And then drop a comet. Do another D3. Yeah. You can just do that. It's great. Ionis has disappointed me.
Yes.
Because spells are so unreliable, Priest 2 doesn't really matter. Right? Like, what Ionis excels at is generating the big blessed weapons. But that doesn't matter right now, because it doesn't affect mount attacks, and our infantry is just not...
for the big one.
No.
Oh, no, mount attacks.
Yeah.
My bad.
It affects the riders.
Companion attack.
It affects the riders,
Yeah. And that's what we care about. We care about the mount attacks, except for Paladors, but you're not really buffing Paladors with +1 attack anyway. They're not really worth that much.
I also don't like Soulburn not stopping healing and rallying. I think that would have been a really cool niche for him to have,
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I don't know why they removed it.
If he had his War Scroll from 3rd edition, he would absolutely be worth his points. The banishing...
And they raised it 30 points. It's like, cool.
Yeah. Banishing manifestations, the Soulburn preventing healing, all of those things were cool, and he would absolutely be worth his price point right now. With his current War Scroll, he needs to come way down.
It needs to be like 80 points cheaper, honestly. Like, he's not a damage piece. He's literally just a fast flying priest. that shoots.
Yes.
I would.
How is he more expensive than Stormdrake Guard? Like, I don't get it.
I would very much like his old version of Soulburn back, but the new version is cool in its own way, in the sense that it just does damage for the rest of the game every single turn. Even if he's dead,
Yes.
like that's cool.
It's not 410 points cool. I think it's like 320,
because it wounds on 4s, and it's only a 10-inch range, I think.
Yeah.
Hard to use and unreliable. But the fact that he just does it out of spite, I think that's a cool thing. But yeah, I think the utility of blocking, healing, or rally, because rally's actually pretty big. Like
rally's huge.
It's big. It's like before you could chunk down units like a little bit at a time, rally's just like, no, I'm healing the same amount every time I rally on average. You know, like doesn't matter if I've lost half the unit or one model in my squad of Chosen, I'm getting roughly the same amount of Chosen back every time. So it's rally's big for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ionis, the 2-priest thing kind of isn't that useful because like, yeah, you could have 30 ritual points and you still roll a 1 and then you do nothing. Cool.
Yep.
And also, we don't need a priest, like we're talking about, you know, like maybe if infantry is much better and easier to use, we could maybe use Ionis to give a big bless weapons, but that's like you don't need him to translocate, and you don't even need translocate. So, yeah.
Yeah,
if you could just guarantee 6, kind of like Teclis. You know, when Teclis countercasts, doesn't matter. He's still on 10. If he just generated 6 ritual points.
Yes.
At least on one of his chants, not even both.
It could even be once per game. It could even be once per game, and I would love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Just 6 ritual points, unmodified. Can't be modified by -1, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my problem with Ionis is like things around him also need to get cheaper or just more efficient, or just like there's so much hate against things that want things like bless weapons. Yeah, it's like it's like yeah, I'll have Ionis, he gets his cool bless weapons like y'all were saying. It's just that everything that wants those buffs, like it doesn't A, need those buffs, or B, it's just it doesn't take it well because there's no delivery mechanic.
Yeah.
Like it's just you're just push pull with Ionis and the units that want to actually get the big bless weapons.
Yes.
He could also get the right keywords. He's missing Ruination Chamber, right? It would be cool if you could give him Bleak Citadels for a 5-up board.
Yeah, that'd be great.
He's the guy who stocks the towers of the Ruination Chamber. How is he not Ruination? You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Also, no resistance roll. Yeah, nothing like that. That's weird. Yeah.
Okay, Andrasta. So people were very excited about her at the start of the edition, and I'm pretty sure all that excitement's gone. She is just okay. She's barely playable. I think that, and that's not a bad thing. To be playable is a good thing, but she's like barely above that threshold.
Yes.
I think her and Talia Vedra, they did the same exact thing, man. They were like, yeah, let's bump them to 340, 330. People will play it. Like, no. They need to be 270, 280.
Yeah, she needs to come down. I was super hyped about Andrasta when I saw her, until I saw that most of the units that had 4-up wards kept them, and she didn't. And that's huge.
Yeah,
because she just dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a one-shot missile. It's like she'll kill something and then she'll die into.
You know what else is great for that? Prosecutors, and you get to revive them after they die.
Yeah, and you can bring a reinforced one for 280. So why would you bring in Russa?
And they'll have more health.
Yeah, they have more health.
More damage.
Charge. They have a resistance roll. It's like if someone tries to like do spell on them. Is covering fire core?
Okay.
Yes.
You cannot use resistance roll against covering fire because the reaction covering fire doesn't target them.
Yeah.
Okay, so Andrasta, I don't know, point change, and it's a different story, right? She's a War Master, so big C tier.
Also shared like a plus to. It's just monster, right? Like if it was also hero monster, like I think that would make it a bit more interesting.
Yeah, she would be
monsters.
She should be the general sniper, right? Busting into the enemy's back line, taking the head, dying, going back to Sigmar, presenting the kill, and doing it all again, right?
Yeah, but what would Neve do? They can't do that. That's Neve's job.
She could just not exist. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, she's just way too expensive. If they're going to keep her at this price point, they need to do more with her.
lower the price point.
If you lower the price point, I think it's fine.
sometimes it's that simple.
Yeah.
Like we kept saying this about Bastion in 3rd edition, where like you bring in the 250, he's playable, and they kept reducing her points and Bastion points, and she's sort of like, it felt better to take her. She wasn't great, but now her war skill's great, her points still suck. So they've switched the problems again. Just bring her to 270, dude. Bring her to the same points as Bastion. She's playable.
Yeah, I'd agree. If we had like a War Master threshold, like a bring any unit regiment kind of hero, and it was all of them were like 270, and they were all different at what they did, like, yeah, I actually like that design. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Karazai. He's good. He's playable. Better than Andrasta. Even in the spell meta, I think he's good. Once the spell meta is over or fixed, let's say, hopefully, it's not going to be completely changed. Like, the manifestations are a big selling point of this edition. They're not going to completely remove them. Karazai is great.
Yes.
The main thing, and David, I'll let you take the floor in a second here, but like the main thing is the -2 attacks, right? Stacking his Ancient Master of War with the Bodyguard giving -1 attacks is just so good in this meta. Because people are spamming Gluttons, Dawn Riders, Hex Wraiths, all of these units that have 2 or 3 attacks each suddenly now have 1 attack each against Karazai. And it's so good. He just lives forever. He takes a hit, he gets stronger, and then with the Vexillor, you just heal him back up. And it's just, it feels great. It feels so good.
I have been enjoying Karazai, and I will say that it's just Krondy is just so... He's just overshadowing just because of meta. Like, I think it's making Karazai, just based off like communications with different people in our Discord and other Discord, is that everyone's assuming Karazai just isn't that great, and it's not, and it's because Krondy is just so good. And I want people to know that Karazai is really good himself. He's just overshadowed. And like you said, Paul, like the -2 attacks is kind of nuts. I honestly wish I had 30 more points in my Karazai list, only so I could take some Vigilars, so he could be 2s and 2s the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Usually because you don't want to use all attack on him. Usually you all attack like on Paladors or something else, so they could swing Simo. He's usually want to take all defense, but it would be nice to reevaluate him in a week or a couple months, whenever the next balance patch is. I think a lot more people will start coming over to Karazai. And also, if you're going to spend Praetors and Vex Banner on one model, at that point, it almost feels better to take Karazai, because that's such an investment that you need that model to live.
Yeah. It's not even that
that's my issue.
It feels good to double down on an investment, but it's also just the way effective health scales, right? If you have a -1 attack and you've already, like, if you, best case scenario, your opponent has 2 attacks, right? You've cut their damage in half, which means you've doubled your effective health. And then healing and wards scale as a percentage off of that, right? So it's like all of these things multiply off each other, right? So if you've cut your opponent's damage in half, and then of that damage they've done, you've healed D3, you've effectively healed 2D3. And then if you have a 5-up ward, it's effectively even better, because like the impact of it just gets better and better and better. So like it's such a small difference in their war scroll. Like it feels like Wizard 2 and this really powerful spell is like so much better than what Karazai brings, but it's not like that much better. Karazai is good. He's just a different unit. He's more like a reinforced hammer. He's like bringing 4 concussors. Like, you have to stop thinking of Karazai as a comparison to Krondys and think of him as a replacement for a reinforced hammer in your army that can't be revived, which sucks, but it's better to compare him that way.
Also, he's just a really, like just double down on that. He's just an amazing anvil and just, like, objective bully. Like, you could, like, because the objectives are smaller now. So you, in theory, with him and just, like, a banner, nothing, you don't even have to have the Praetors really on the objective, but him and the banner just sitting on an objective is 16. You're not going to fit more than 16 worth of models on that objective of Karazai. Yeah. He's a 6.25 inch base. Like, it's not going to happen. Like...
Well, he's a bully, and it feels good to bully.
Yeah. Yep. So, but yeah, if you have Karazai, try him out. He's really fun. I've been enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last one, Star Drakes. I know Corbs and Jack, you guys have been playing Star Drakes. I haven't had a chance to try them yet. My gut is telling me Lord Celestin on Star Drake is better right now, because gobbling up stuff just feels better. But we do have a Drake Sword and Templar list to talk about soon, right?
Yes. I ran the Drakesworn Templar at Tacoma. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. The matchups that I really struggled with, the Lord Celestant would have come out on top, and so that's what I pivoted.
Does the 30-point difference matter in that calculation? Okay.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Yeah, just like auto killing blade geists.
Yeah. 3 blade geist die immediately.
Yeah, gobbling up hex wraiths, gobbling up gluttons, gobbling up trolls. It is fantastic.
Yeah, Chaos Chosen with a 5-up ward and -1 to wound. Num 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 num.
Num num num.
That it's equal and above than just above. That was it's huge. You have to really lean into him. So like we were talking about with Karazai, it's the Vexillor, it's the Praetors, and he just sits there for like 3 battle rounds while you try to kill him.
Yep. And every time your Gryph-hounds die, he gets to Envoy of the Heavens to give himself a 5-up ward. And he's either got a Mirror Shield to be basically immune to Jezzails, or he's packing Quicksilver Draft to get additional Strike First.
Strike First.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
And actually, at my local game store, I saw 6 Vanguard charge into him, and he ate 3. 556, 556. It was like, you should have seen their face. It was like so.
It's real good.
Yeah, the Star Drakes are good. I really want to try Lord Celestant on Star Drake. I think the next 2 lists I'm going to be trying are like a gimmick Krondys crossbow, Rend 3 crossbow kind of thing, and then the next one I want to try is Lord Celestant on Star Drake with like a pack of Fulminators.
Yeah, both of the Star Drakes are good.
How is the Drakesworn worth using? Like, let's
monsters aren't prevalent.
It depends on the list. So, like, the list I took to Tacoma had the Drakesworn Templar as my anti-hero, anti-monster piece.
Yeah, it's anti-hero also, so keep that.
Yeah, which is great.
It is and it isn't.
So, but the issue with it was that, like, if he wasn't in that role as murdering my opponent's centerpiece, he was an objective bully in the way that you would use Karazai. He's not as good as Karazai, but he could fill that role, and he was okay at it.
Yeah.
The issue that I ran into was that most of the time now, you're not going to see a whole lot of hero monster centerpieces, and so the Lord Celestant just has better utility.
Yeah, another problem to consider.
All the top lists I'm looking at only have infantry heroes. So that's the thing.
Because the Drakesworn's Rampage requires targeting a monster, and then if it's a hero, you get a bonus. Correct. You can't just use it against a hero.
Well, but the Rider has anti-hero, which makes him Rend 2, which is huge.
Built in.
It's nice, but it's not. I wouldn't call him an anti-hero. He is anti-monster, right? That's what he is. And then when it's a hero monster, he gets even wackier, right? Which most monsters
honest,
are hero
if you're
monster.
Attacking a hero that isn't a monster, you don't need the Rend to kill him. Like with the mount attacks and Templar weapons, you just kill him regardless.
I think the biggest problem for Drakesworn isn't even that the Star Drake exists. It's just that we don't have any trouble killing monsters right now when we're packing 6 long strikes. Like that's just not something we need to tech into. It's already covered in every list.
Yeah, and that was what I found from analyzing my play at Tacoma, was that ultimately, as much as I love the Drakesworn, and as much as he was a psychological warfare piece, because the armies like Slaanesh that are bringing hero monsters, Be'lakor, stuff like that, no one will go near him.
Yeah.
They will actively avoid him and cede control of the table to me.
Be'lakor will use Dark Master on it. He will.
Yes. And that's fine, because then he's not Dark Mastering my long strikes. But what I found was that ultimately it wasn't, that utility did not account for the times when he was not filling that role. And so that's why I've pivoted to the Lord Celestant, especially in this meta.
I don't see that changing anytime soon. Maybe if there's a bunch of battle tomes in a row that feature monsters, like you get like a Nurgle, Gargants, Khorne, like those 3 come out in a short period of time, maybe, and there's like tons of monsters around. But I don't see it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think that he's like a C tier model, and the current meta pushes him to D.
I don't know. I like him. I think he's a little bit
playable.
Than that.
He's fun.
Yeah.
Which is way better than he's ever been.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think
agreed.
it's nice to have that model, that's such a centerpiece model, become playable.
Yeah.
And that's what excited me quite a bit about it. About both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the part where I bring up Celestin Prime.
Oh, poor my boy.
Talking about centerpiece models getting good. Oh boy. Okay.
You could play them, but it's so many points. Like, why?
Crit mortals are overcosted, except in Lumineth. Dante in the chat. Any realistic way to use Krondys and Karazai in one list? Yeah, we get that question all the time. Personally, I don't like it, but it has shown good results, right? Somebody went 4-1 with it to GT recently. Was that Stark who did that?
No, it was one of our Houston locals. It was,
okay.
Okay. But he's also like a really, really good player. Like consistently goes 4-1, 5-0s at tournaments. That list was all pilot, more than list.
Yeah, it's playable. It's just it has a very high ceiling.
There's no room for mistakes if you want to play it competitively. Like every mistake is game ending.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to play, Krondys with a pack of 6 Javelin Paladors or Axe Paladors, it's like, yeah, you made a mistake. Well, you can bring back half your Paladors at least. Like, it's not the end of the game. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about some sample lists here. That was a good discussion. First up, Corbs, you're still there?
Oh, I'm here.
All right, let's talk about your Drakesworn Templar list here, because you've been hot on the Drakesworn the entire time we've been talking about the new edition.
It's funny. I have mostly been playing Krondys, but the Templar I was painting right when the edition hit. I was just finishing him up, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" It was so exciting to see actual damage. The Ren 1 kind of hurts sometimes when you're playing him. Like, it's not a ton of dice. It's the same with the Star Drake.
Celestin.
Yeah, the Celestin feels similar sometimes. Like, their Ren 1 sort of is a little bit annoying. But I think they're great. I think they're great pieces. I think you can build lists around them. I really don't think that would be the case without Quicksilver Draft. Like, I really think that's what makes the play worthwhile, because it becomes this very sort of defensive, offensive unit. You put it as soon as possible, onto an objective. You're giving it that 5-up ward, and you're sort of just baiting people to come and get you while using like pretty good shooting. So I do think without Quicksilver Draft, I don't know that that it would have as much legs, but I think either of the Star Drakes right now can play into lists similar to sort of this list that I have here. Mm-hmm. I have the 3 Praetors because I think any big centerpiece model right now that you're bringing needs the Praetors. It's just the extra wounds that you get from that. The effective wounds is massive, keeps them alive so much longer. And as we all know, if the Praetors do get into combat, they'll do a few wounds too. They can fight.
They're not bad.
Yeah. And then, I mean, this list in particular, obviously 6 long strikes, we all know. We start there. And then I have Vigilers, which you could drop for just Vanquishers if you wanted to take the Star Drake, the Celestin. That would be sort of the swap there. The Gryph-hounds are really just to go out and die so you can get the 5-up ward Envoy.
I forgot to draw this. Sorry, this is the 4 hours of sleep here. There's a bunch of problems with this slide. But the Drakesworn Templar should have Envoy the Heavens and Mirror Shield. Not Mirror Shield, Quicksilver. Yeah.
Quicksilver. Yeah. So yeah, you're putting him in the middle with the Praetors. You're trying to get that 5 of war as much as possible. You're probably dropping in the Griffhounds so that they hopefully kill it in their turn, hoping that they're not going to get a double, though, and then you don't get a killed unit. But you can do the same thing with the Prosecutors, too. I've been dropping in 3 Prosecutors into most of my lists recently, literally purely for utility. Like, they're a threat off the board. When you do drop them down, they can score tactics because they can fly around. They can swing in and kill a hero, possibly. Or like a small unit that the other army is trying to use to score flanks. So I've actually been enjoying a single unit of Prosecutors, and so I sort of have it in here as well because it'll serve a utility and a purpose, and then it'll die. And so again, giving you that 5 of ward, which is pretty important.
I'm liking Prosecutors more and more. I don't think they're anything more than B tier. Just 140 is a strange value for them, right?
For 6 wounds,
much.
130 would be great. 120 is where I'd really like them, but that's probably too low, right? Like 130 is probably what I'd settle on.
You don't want them spammed. That's
yeah.
I think 130 is like a sweet spot.
They're fast enough that they can avoid taking damage, so spam would be a concern. Yeah. How have you been liking Fulminators? Because I think I like them personally, despite the health problems, despite the make it sound like it's like an old man or something, despite the health problems, despite the lower health than they used to have, which I can't get over. Like I'm trying to get over it, I can't.
No, it's frustrating.
Despite the lower damage, despite the lack of mortal wound shooting, like they're just worse, right? But they're the same cost as they used to be. But they still feel like a good unit. When they charge and they hit something, it's gone, right? Like they're still one of the few units that can get the job done.
Yeah, they're great. They still do the work, but the 20 wounds versus 30 wounds for the Paladors is a lot.
Yeah.
If they would have made them just a 3-pack, I'd be fine. The problem is that they're a 2-pack. The 2-pack is the issue.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're gonna be 2-pack, it's like Stormdrake Guard. It's like Stormdrake Guard should be 5 wounds. It's like or 6 wounds. They feel right about the War Scroll feels right. The points don't. But yeah, you have to do something to make it. And I think that's why they did the whole give them the Azerite Halo. But if your strategy around making a unit good is have them roll 6s, it's not a good strategy.
Yes, agreed.
Oh, that's another thing we didn't mention about the Star Drakes is the the Extremist Chamber ability scales really well. The more effective health you stack onto these guys with Praetors and Vexillor, and just the more hits you get, the more mortal wounds you bounce back to enemies. And it gets really frustrating for your opponent to just pour tons and tons of damage in. You save it all, you reflect a bunch of mortal. There's times where your opponent attacks and they take more damage than you did, than you took. It's great.
Yeah, and in this list too, I'm usually running Astrea as the general, not the Drake Swarm. And so I'm keeping the Fulminators out of the general's regiment usually, and giving the +1/+1 to long strings.
Okay. Yeah. So okay, my bad. Drake Swarm should not be the general. Reformed Bugman says, can't believe I waited a month for Stormkeep to help me build a list with this Forsaken index, and they're like, yeah, we don't really know either. Big dragons, I guess. YOLO. It's
To be completely honest, this is not what I'm taking to tournaments. This is just a really fun list because I spent 6 months painting the Templar.
I take this to an RTT. I would not take this to
exactly.
a 5-round GT.
But you will have a ton of fun playing this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's important.
The big dragon thing is kind of true. Like Krondys and Karazai are 2 of our better units right now. You're gonna see a lot of Krondys. It's not like it's not like a YOLO kind of thing where it's like you just do whatever you want. Like Krondys is actually a very good unit and requires good play, but he will do very well for you. But there's a list on here that don't have big dragons because I still have something in my brain that tells me that there's better options. Yeah. Drops. How do you feel about this 2-drop setup here? Do you think there's more value to be gained if you went with a Knight Arcanum or a Relictor somehow, pick up a 3rd drop, or are you set with this 1 wizard?
It's just not enough units. That's the thing. When you're bringing the big dragon, and then you also need Astrea, you're just putting a lot of points in your heroes already.
Yeah, that's my problem with the Star Drakes is that their regiments kind of just don't work for how we want to build lists right now.
Totally.
I don't understand why the Lord Celestin that's supposed to be kind of a leader for a faction can't just take anything.
Because he's not a Lord Commander. He's a Lord Celestin. He's the head of the Warrior and Extremist Chamber.
Yeah. There's like a legitimate lore reason behind it.
Yeah. Okay. It's like a Lord Aquilor. Lord Aquilor leads the Vanguard, like a Lord Celestin leads the Warrior and Extremists. Yeah. It's not the best reason, but it's a reason. How do you feel about having Morbid Conjuration with one wizard that doesn't have any bonuses? Corpse.
I just honestly have been like loving the -1 to save of the Purple Sun.
Okay, you're just gambling.
Yeah.
Nothing else. You can just get Great Tide. Great Tide isn't a bad split.
And Great Tide's great too. It's just that whole thing is just too good.
Yeah.
So
the whole lore is stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that or Primal, but I've been taking more of it on every list, so it's just sort of there.
I wouldn't hate Primal here. The Life Swarm on the Templar is pretty cool. And you can just like summon out a Jaws and your opponent can't banish it in the same turn.
I played a few games like that, and yeah, the healing's great, but it didn't really need it once I started bringing Praetors.
I will back up Corpse on that. I used to always bring Primal with Karazai, and I'm starting to learn that I really don't need Life Swarm. Like, I'd rather just have more utility for other things. I literally rather just have the sun. Like, if I had one cast, I almost rather just have the sun. Just throw out the sun. Just okay, like Karazai's Ren 3/4 now. Paladors are Ren 2. Like Longstrikes are Ren 3/4. Like, I'd rather just have that.
2/3. Fulminators get back to what they were before. Like, it's great.
Purple Sun is Blizzard again. Yeah, it's the new Blizzard.
It's fantastic.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. This list here I call Double Cavalry. These aren't like super refined lists or anything, guys. We're just kind of trying to talk through our process of how we came up with this, what we're thinking about building, because we don't expect the state of affairs to last, right? So we're kind of just talking through the process, and hopefully you guys can resonate with these thoughts. So this one here, like I said, I don't want to play the big dragon in every single list. So in here, I want to run a triple threat. I want to run reinforced shooting. I want to run 2 units of reinforced cavalry, because I think cavalry is just more efficient. There's no reason to use infantry right now in this meta of spellcasting, right? So Dracolines, super tanky. The key to using Dracolines is that you power through with them so you don't get stuck in combat. You either wipe what you hit or you power through. If they ever get stuck in combat, that means you can't use the Griff Chargers revive on them, and that's when it's like, well, you should have brought a different unit at that point, right? But man, Dracolines, when you charge stuff and you do a bunch of damage, then you power through and you just heal back everything you took, it's so demoralizing. Your opponent then has to kill 30 wounds on a 3-up, and then it can still come back to life with Heaven Sent. Like, the way this healing scales with effective health is crazy. Then it's also got the Paladors and Longstrikes, which are good.
I ran this list against the Slaves of Darkness. That Evocator redeploy, don't take an objective, like, dance around the edge of it.
Yeah.
And as soon as they come for you, you go, I'm going to redeploy. I'll touch this objective with 1 Evocator. And they charge into you. They're like, okay, I'll go. I'm like, no. You have any first strike units? I do. So I'll go.
Yeah. Okay. So to explain what that is, because I got very excited when I thought about this. This is one of the things I like most about Dracolines is Dracolines have strike first if they're contesting an objective you do not control. So what you want to do with Dracolines is you put them just outside of an objective's control range, like 3.1 inches away. Then as soon as anything comes near you that's going to threaten a charge, you redeploy minimum 1 onto the objective. Now you're contesting an objective which you didn't control, so you strike first. And yeah, it's pretty great.
It's very good.
Really good tech.
Also works great with countercharge, because then you can power through after that. The Paladors in this list are really, like, they're not really a melee hammer. They're more like a shooting unit, because you can just whip them out 20 inches, charge something, and then power through 14 inches back. And it feels more like a shooting unit than it does a melee unit most of the time. Except it's like it has the option to stay in place and be tanky and then, get revived. This list, I'm really liking. The Arcanum on Griff Charger has really grown on me. I mentioned earlier I'm thinking about using the Arcanum on Dracoline so that I just have more damage on the Dracolines because they don't punch through stuff like they used to, and I want to be able to have good punch. But the Griff Charger is just all over the board, everywhere I want him to be. He's scoring me so many tactics that the lack of screens in this list doesn't really matter as much. Like, this list doesn't have chaff. It has 2 units of Griff Hounds for screens, and that's it. So there's nothing I can just put on the side and feel good about it. Like, if I had 5 Vigilors, like you were saying earlier, just shooting stuff off the side, I don't have that here. So I found that the teleport really, really, really helps.
Yeah.
And then this one has a Knight Relictor with Hounds. That could be a Knight Arcanum instead, right? If you're playing into more spell casting, that gives you 3 different casts with this list, which is great for Morbid Conjuration. The Hounds are not the best screen. You have to play pretty carefully with this list. You have to leverage the healing on the Dracolines. You have to leverage them as an anvil to make this style work. You have to leverage the Paladors as kind of like a missile that then jumps back. Maybe I should have just called this list Power Through, because that's all I'm trying to do here constantly. It's charge and retreat, and then heal and do it all again. But it's been fun. I think I'm 4-1 with this list right now. I used a slight variant of it, but I'll count it. It's been working out pretty well. I think it's got legs.
Yeah, I love it. You were talking about it the other day on Discord, and because I have a double Vanguard Palador list, but when you were talking about this, I was looking at it. I was looking at switching in those evocators. I only have 3, but just such a being off the objective and then just redeploying onto it, and then being able to bring them back. It's a similar kind of annoying play to what the Paladors do, but sort of different and mid board. I really like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a free unbind.
Like what it
people don't realize.
Yeah, they unbind. I keep forgetting that.
Yes, they do.
Eric in chat asks, Javelin or Shock Axes? So I've been testing both. I'm right now leaning towards Shock Axes because they not only do they keep the Vanguard Paladors alive long enough for them to power through, but they can assist reducing damage like on the Dracolines, right? Because if usually when you charge, like one of the problems Stormcast have always had is charging in 2 units at the same time. You take damage on one after you fight with one, right? Like if you fight with the Paladors first, you give the enemy -1 to wound. They are heavily incentivized to fight the Dracolines because the Dracolines haven't fought yet. They want to reduce the amount of damage they take. Well, now they're going to be -1 to wound when they do it, right? They're not going to hit the Paladors. The Paladors have already attacked. They're done all the damage they're going to do for the turn, and they're probably going to power through, right? So the damage is going to go on the Dracolines, and the axes help protect there. I would probably use the Javelins if I had like Vigilors in my list or Bastion, so I could get a +1 hit effect in every single phase. Even then, the Javelins, in terms of average damage output, like they do about 10% more if you have all-out attack every single time, which is like
a lot of CP.
Yeah, it adds up, which is like more damage is good. Damage is utility, right? But I think the ease of use and the -1 to wound kind of just makes the axes better in this particular list. I've tried both.
My experience has been the -1 to wound is just like backbreaking sometimes.
Yeah.
Big things.
I'm the same way. Yeah,
especially against elves. Elves hate it.
Yeah. I was really, really, really committed to javelins when I first started building lists in the index, and I have completely converted over to the axes. The axes are great.
Yeah, I would definitely consider using the javelins. The thing I like most about them is that they split the damage in different phases, which I'm a huge fan of. I love doing stuff in every single phase. The more stuff split into every phase, the better, right? Because it's unpredictable, and your opponent is tempted to use all-out defense. And if they do, it's a huge mistake. But you can split the damage. You can charge one thing, shoot it, and then when you fight, you fight another thing, right? Like it's useful, it's cool, it's good. But I think the axes work better in this list.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, right now, I'd probably use a Knight Arcanum instead of a Knight Relictor. I think this list really benefits from reducing wards because there's nothing super high volume in here. There's nothing super high rend. But I mean, does it matter? Purple Sun, Shackles, right? Like, it should be enough. That should be enough to get through saves. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I had a different list here. Okay. Well, I've got another one here. This one we kind of just came up with as a response to what's currently happening in the meta. We just wanted to say, well, how do we deal with the fact that everybody's spamming endless spells? Like, that is the meta, right? So let's put together the typical Estrella Longstrike Palador package. But let's bring in a Knight Incantor to give everything -1 to cast, or to summon. Knight Arcanum to get +1 banish. And we got a Lord Veritant that we can drop into play to give another -1 to cast. Now, I've selected Morbid Conjuration here, but you could also go for the Stormcast lore, drop a Comet, and give another -1 to cast. And now you're in total giving enemies -3 to cast. Which is like, yeah, they're not casting spells at that point anymore. Like, you're trying to get Purple Sun on an 11? I don't think so. That's not happening. Unless you're tech listed, then you can't be modified. But everybody else, not happening. The other units picked here, Quester Soulsworn are just incredibly efficient. They're just, the damage and health and everything they do for their cost is great. The Judicators with crossbows are kind of a tech piece here because on average, they'll kill most spells in the game in one volley. Like, if it's like a 6 health spell on a 6-up save or a 5-up save, they kill it without even using all-out attack. And if they have all-out attack, they usually kill the Purple Sun in one volley. So you just drop them in. Endless spells can't even redeploy out of their shooting range like some other units could. They just drop in and they're a cleanup crew. They just blast spells all game long.
And if they don't, you can just stop their infantry from charging you.
Yeah, extra utility there, right? Like, oh, Gluttons with 1 charge dice? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a meta
I did that
response.
against some Wrathmongers. It was really funny.
Oh yeah.
I was like, cool. Those things are never gonna touch me. Just forget about them.
Yeah.
They're never gonna come near my army.
Yeah. This list, of course, has more drops, which I personally don't really mind. Some people might. But Knight Arcanums, Lord Veritant, Incantor, all these foot heroes are so good, they're worth the drop, in my opinion. It went Vanguard Wing because what else? What else is it going to do? Thunderhead Host to give the Questers +1 hit? You know, like, okay, sometimes my long strikes will teleport themselves. Cool. Doesn't really matter. And then we've got one more list here, because Jack and Mergonk don't want to submit lists until until everything is fixed.
I mean, I'm playing, like, if you want to know what I'm playing, I'm not playing Annihilators. I'm playing freaking Krondys or Celestine on Star Drake. So it's not. Oh, sorry, not Celestine. The Estrella 6 Evocators that we just saw.
Mm-hmm.
Water Economy. So it's like, it's not super exciting because Manifestation meta is dumb.
It really
hopefully,
restricts what we're doing.
I really hope the Battle Scroll comes, because I have a GT in about a week and a half. I really hope the Battle Scroll comes out this week and just fixes that for us.
I'm tired of thinking
it's
about
it. It's gonna be a boring GT. It's gonna be a boring GT otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, I want to have fun.
We should make a channel on the Discord server. Purple Sun Kill Shots comes back, except this time it's when the Purple Sun kills the other Purple Sun.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jack, what's your excuse?
My excuse is I don't want to lead people down the wrong path until I have a really good handle on it. Because I'm doing a Star Drake, 6 Palador, 6 Raptors, Estrella. Like, that's the list right now. So we already saw a variant of it, so I didn't really have anything to add.
Okay. But I'll say all we do is lead people wrong on this channel, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'll be honest, I feel a little guilty telling people about, like, how good, like, that Evocator list is. In my opinion, it's actually a pretty good list. But, like, they're Legends units. If you're a Stormcast player who's just joined and you don't have them,
yeah, don't.
Do not go get them.
Yeah, don't go get them. I mean, they're a little cheap on eBay, cheaper than they used to be, but you're buying models for less than a year.
They're gorgeous models. Models are forever.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Yeah, I mean, worst comes to worst, you can run them as Dracothian Guard, because in my opinion, Evocators on Draculanes, model-wise, looks-wise, are worth the money over Dracothian Guard. But that's your mileage, obviously.
Yeah.
Stuart in the chat, we should have Purple Sun dodgeball tournaments at GSTs. That's not too far off from what the game's turning into, yeah.
My bet is, I have a betting pool with my buddies, like, how many printed Purple Suns are we going to see? Because nobody can buy them. They're all sold out. Unless you want to get scalped. So it's like,
bring the plushie.
how many of those are going? Yeah, I know. Bring the plushie.
All right, David, take us away with your Karazai list because we're tired of talking about spells.
Yeah, so this Karazai list, I had a couple of I guess different lists of the same concept, but I think this is the one I like the most. I hate having one wizard, but I really need the ward hate. Just with the meta now because of trolls and everything, and a lot more people are bringing things with the wards. So I really need a Knight Relictor in my lists. But the concept is not that bad. It's just Karazai, Praetors, and the Vex. I will say if you are using Krondi, you're probably only using one or the other, which is fine. But I feel like with Karazai, the whole point is what we iterated earlier to double down on his tankiness. So with this type of list, like you don't have to save stacking anymore, but you just traded save stacking for insane amount of healing. You can heal with Vex. You can heal with Vex Banner. You can heal with Rally. You can heal with Healing Storm. Like this list has so much healing for Karazai that unless somebody just does 20 damage through all his debuffs, he's gonna just keep staying alive. I do wish Praetors and Karazai would probably go down a little bit more, just with the meta we have. But I think if the meta cleans up, I guess Karazai is kind of fine at 500. Praetors are still weird at 150. I think they should be 130, 120.
Yep, 130.
That, yeah, like 130 is probably nice. So, other than that, Vanguard Wing, of course.
And are you doing the bodyguard thing for the extra -1?
Yeah, I usually do honor guard, unless like the only exception would be if you play a list where that doesn't actually help you. Like if you play Zinch, who's just running like all these flamers shooting like like you don't need honor guard. Like what am I scared of? Pink horrors? like charging Karazai? Like it's better in that sense. It's better to have priority target on long strikes, because you want to kill Fate Weaver, right?
Yeah.
Like so, I think in 9 out of 10 matchups you're gonna want honor guard, just because everybody's running cavalry and stuff like that. I will say, but yeah, don't just automatically put that in your brain. Like there are matchups where, like, if you know you're not gonna be in combat, why are you gonna waste time for honor guard? Yeah. Right? Like that's just a bit. But
I love that it's versatile. That always feels good. Like when I was playing Flesh Eaters last edition, it felt great to like, yeah, my default is +1 save on objectives, but sometimes I'm gonna pivot and do something else. It feels really good.
But yeah, also only one cast, so I know we're big on Primal with bigger dragons, but I will say it has not come up with Life Swarm because I just haven't needed it. So I'd rather just use the Arcanum and a Place of Power, just throw out a Spine. It's another big base that blocks your long strikes, might block your Paladors, might get less stuff inside for Karazai.
I actually really like that choice. Arcanum with the +1, sometimes +2 on a Place of Power. If you can't keep up with Morbid Conjuration, just eat it with the Cron Spine. You know, I really like that tech. That's a good tech.
Yeah, list's been doing well with me. I mean, I could be that guy on Kanadi, but yeah. So for me, I mean, right now with the meta, I'm either Karazai or I'm the 6 Dracolines with the Palador list. That's another list that's been really fun because it's just crazy. it's just insane.
let me ask you, because we talked about not putting Dangle Bros into General's Regiment to prevent enemies from scoring Slay the Entourage, and you pointed this out to me on Discord, but that I think the channel would benefit from you saying it. The Praetors, they don't have to be in the General's Regiment, right? Like, you don't have to do Bodyguard on them. You could do Bodyguard on the Vexillor. You could do Bodyguard on the Paladors even. And putting the Praetors in this regiment means your opponent could kill them. They're only 9 wounds, right? They'll have a 5-up board, but it's not hard to kill them. And then score Slay the Entourage. So you could just put it the Knight Arcanum's regiment, right? Because they're Warrior Chamber, you can just put them in there. So why did you specifically choose to put them in Karazai's regiment?
I feel because if you're going 3 drops like this list, you're probably going first anyways, because most super meta chasing armies right now are 2 drops. So I'd rather just not give my opponent any information. So with this list, what my drops look like is going to be Arcanum or Relictor drops near usually a Place of Power if it's in my deployment zone. Again, depends on the map. And then the Gryph-hounds or Vanquishers in the sky. And then your opponent drops 1, and then you drop 2. Is going to be Relictor, and then Gryph-hounds or Vanquishers in the sky, right? So your opponent has seen nothing good about your army except 2 heroes that might be anywhere on the board. That's it. That's all the information your opponent has, and he has to deploy his entire army. And then I get Reactor Karazai.
Yeah, and like you said, as soon as you put those Praetors down, everybody knows where Karazai is going. So if the Praetors were in the Knight Arcanum's regiment and you deployed the Arcanum's regiment, because you don't want to tip your hand on where Karazai is going. He's the most important thing, right? So if the Praetors were in the Arcanum's regiment, you put the Praetors down, well, Karazai has to be within 3 of that unit, right? Like you're not going to separate them off the bat.
Exactly. So that's why if you're really scared about your Praetors getting killed, I mean, you could put them in the Arcanum or Relictor, but most armies are built 2 or 3 drops anyway. So Karazai Regiment's always going to drop last. So you really are doing yourself a service by giving your opponent to see 2 models, and then the entire rest of your army is not on the board, and they have to deploy.
Yeah, I like the information game much more than I care about choosing going first or second. I liked it more when we had 30-inch shooting, but it's still important to know. Yeah.
And you still have Vanguard Wing with this, so you could run in charge. You could run shoot charge with the Raptors and Paladors. Like the Raptors and Longstrikes are like the real hammer of this list. Karazai is just a big bully tank that sits there. It makes you waste your resources while Longstrikes and Paladors are decimating your army.
Yeah, and the Paladors don't get stuck in combat because of power through and their huge speed. And Karazai's fine with getting stuck in combat because that's where he thrives, right? The Vexillor healing is so good.
You hit Karazai, you better hit hard, because if you do 10 health, he's going to hit back really, really hard.
Now it's my turn. Nice. Okay. That's it for lists. We've had a really good discussion, guys. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been a very fun stream. I'm sorry we didn't get the index review out sooner. We are still going to work on it.
I don't know. We may just do the Battletome review. We're a month out.
It's like there. You know, it's just.
Is it a month out?
Probably.
I would say it's a month out. I would say it's going to go.
That leak that came out showed. Didn't that leak that came out like a while back show like September, like from the actual Battletome? Like it said September 2024.
First week of September, probably. Yeah. That's what it was last year. So.
If we don't do a full index review because the Battletome seems like it's imminent, at least we're gonna probably do a video on like a tier list talking about the units. We'll go through each unit. We won't go through like super in depth about it like we would with an index review. But yeah, we would at the very least put out a tier list for you guys. And then once the Battletome comes out, there's going to be the normal slew of list building videos, Battletome review, all the good stuff that you've come to expect from our channel. Yeah, and hopefully this Magic meta is gone next week. That would be great, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we just came out of the Magic meta from Primal Dice. Like, can we not just repeat that?
This is now the unreliable Magic meta. Isn't it great?
Yeah.
So different. Okay. David, Mergonk, Corbs, Jack, thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate you guys making it on such short notice. Thank you everybody in the chat for watching. I'm gonna do the please use the like button and the things other YouTubers say.
Just please press the like or subscribe. It
sure.
really helps us out and get this information out to like new Stormcast players, so they know.
Yeah, hopefully this has been useful for you guys. Hopefully we're saying things that aren't crazy that other people can resonate with. It's been frustrating building lists with Stormcast. It feels like we've optimized it to like Krondus or double Cavalry. Like that feels like the 2 ways to play it competitively, which is not terribly exciting. John, you saying something?
No, I was agreeing.
Okay. Yeah, it's frustrating. Well, yeah, I think that'll do it for tonight. We're closing in on 3.5 hours. So thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you in